Network.
Correctly with the correct amount.
And now for our feature presentation.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to a very special episode of the Untitled Movie Show for Wednesday, April 8th, 2015. I'm, of course, your host, Mr. Miguel Leon, and you all know the cast and crew from the Retro Unlim Network. First, we got Mr. Michael Burhan.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen. It's good to be back, of course, and thank you, Miguel.
We've also got Dave Wade of Lawn Voice Post 1975.
Hello. By the way, quickly just say, Burhan, sort your beard out. It offends me.
And this week we don't have Anina Kasky here. She's out taking care of acting duties, but that's fine because we have a special guest here to fill in that spot. He's the host of Good Bad Flicks on YouTube as well as Good Bad Games. He's also a contributor on Geek Juice Media and regular on Geek Juice Radio. And he's also the third man on Radiodrome for 1201beyond.com. He's Cecil Trachenberg. Cecil, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I wanted to make sure I got your last name right because I know some of the other contributors call you Trachtenberg, and you were quick to fix that, so I did want to make sure of that.
I appreciate it. It's a common mistake.
Fair enough. So why don't you let some of the fans here from Retro Unlim who aren't aware of your work, let them know what is Good Bad Flicks? What is what you do?
Well, it originally started as just a little side project I was doing for some of my friends across the country who aren't quite as movie savvy as I am. I wanted to talk about obscure movies and movies that kind of have a bad reputation, and it kind of grew from there. Originally, I was doing them, and they were only a few minutes long, and they were pretty terrible. And eventually, I got a little bit more in-depth with them, and as I got to be a better editor, the quality of them improved. I have a friend of mine who does like these really cool animated intros for them, and basically the shows are about obscure movies like Werewolves on Wheels and that kind of thing, things that most people would overlook, and I kind of talk about them, add a few jokes here and there, and go into like the history of the film, like how they got it produced, any troubles that it had, and then I started branching out into another series called Exploring, where I take a movie like Man of Steel, where it has a very divided fan base. It's like you have people that absolutely love the film, you have people that absolutely hate the film, and I kind of would go into the history of that, but a lot more in depth, talking about why things went the way they did, and perhaps offer a few insights as to things that people may have not thought of. Because one of the big things with Man of Steel, for example, was people were like, oh, Superman, he killed Zod, and Superman never kills. And then I went and I cited examples of pretty much everything Superman involved in history, from the comic books to the TV shows to the original Superman Dick Donner movies, where Superman has indeed killed someone. So it was like, look, stop looking at this through so much bias. And I got a lot of people who I've completely changed their mind, which is awesome. So yeah, that's and I also do good, like you said, Good Bad Games, where I kind of take Let's Plays and condense them down to about 20 minutes, where I kind of just refine them down and just show like the really fun parts and kind of talk a little bit about the game and whatnot. Very similar to Good Bad Flicks, just done with video games.
You're the only person I know of who actually did a full in-depth Let's Play of sorts of Cold Fear, which is such an underrated game. I remember buying that game, and I'm so happy you did that episode.
Oh, thank you. It was fun. It was a little frustrating because I was playing it through the PS3, and there was the glitch where it kept pausing like at random intervals. But that wasn't really particularly the game's fault. That was the emulation's fault. So I kind of touched on that. But aside from that, what a fun game. I'm really bummed that didn't do better, because they had so much potential to do more with the concept of it. And they were talking about what they want to do with like future entries in the game or future entries in the series, and just nothing. So it's a shame.
I will say one thing that you missed in the history that I wanted to point out, that I always love to bring up. Cold Fear actually started out as a spin-off of Time Crisis. It was actually going to be a Namco. Yeah, it was actually going to be a game. It was going to be published by Namco, and then they decided to drop the rights. Ubisoft picked it up, and they continued it on, and it became Cold Fear. But I think it was going to be their answer to, I believe the game is called Dead Aim. It was basically a Resident Evil gun con shooter that was based on a boat. So it was going to be their answer to that. But Namco dropped it, and
It's
Ubisoft
an underrated gem, I'll tell you that.
Oh, definitely.
You know, that's pretty cool. I didn't know that. Actually, I mean, I'm kind of glad that it ended up going the way that it did, because the like on the rail gun shooters, they're great for arcades and they're fun for the home, but like they don't really have the staying power, because usually you'll play through it and you'll play through it again with friends, and then it'll go and collect dust. So, and that's not a knock on the game itself. It's just that those ones usually don't have that much longevity, beyond beating them a few times, because they're pretty short. Most of them, they're only meant to be like maybe an hour, 2 hours tops. So I'm kind of glad that it turned into what it did, because they gave it a little bit more back history, and it's just a fun game.
I do like the combination one of the shoots they did. One of my favorite Wii U titles, which is House of the Dead Overkill. Wii titles.
Oh, I love that game.
Yeah, it has that nice little blend of B-movie magic to it, but it also has a little bit of the House of the Dead lore in it as well, and it's so well done in terms of what Sega did with it. I think there's a version of it on the PlayStation 3 as well, where you can use the PS Move on the game, and it's more they flesh the story.
One of the greatest lines ever in a movie that should have been voiced clearly by Bruce Campbell, which is, "I'm gonna rip your motherfucking balls off." So.
That was one thing with the game that I appreciated, that they were like, all right, we're gonna make this game really dirty.
I love the intro with the pole dancer, and not because he's very attractive, but just the fact that it just went, by the way, this is more than a game, this is an experience. Now you're looking at, like, a genuine grindhouse movie from the 70s. Crackling lines on the screen and bad over dubbing and shit and everything. But it's one of my favorite games on the Wii. Good call, Burhan. Good call.
Yeah, I really do appreciate that game, and I would love to pick it up. I'd love to pick up the PS3 version, but I'm a little bit tight on cash. But we could talk about games.
Buy yourself a Wii, because if you want to buy it on the Wii right now in cash converters, you can buy that game for £1.50.
Can I buy the Wii for £1.50?
No, but you can buy it in cash converters for £15. So there you go.
Yeah, you can buy it for about
Fair enough.
That's £16.50 well spent there, son.
But yeah, we could talk about games all day, but we actually have a theme tonight, and it's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring Cecil on, because
Say his name. I can't pronounce it. Say his name. Go on.
You are actually a big fan of this director, and I wanted to get you guys' your thoughts specifically, because I know we're probably going to have different viewpoints on his movies, but tonight we're going to be talking about the works of M Knight Shaymalan.
Sorry, you can't see this behind the scenes. I'm voicing his name and trying to get the pronunciation of his surname right, and I can never do it. Say it again.
Shyamalan.
I call him Shalamalama Ding Dong.
Yeah, and like I said, we're all going to have our viewpoints on it, but this is about it's less about the man himself and more about the movies he's created, which very definitely. So, before we get into the actual films themselves, I wanted to get your thoughts on Shyamalan, Cecil. What are your thoughts of M. Night as a director?
As a director, I think he's really underappreciated, because he puts so much effort into his movies. Now, love or hate the guy, what really bothers me is that he's constantly lumped in with directors like Uwe Boll, where it's like Uwe Boll, who we actually interviewed him on Radiodrome a while ago, and actually I should say Josh interviewed him a while ago. I wasn't there for that one, but he was super cool. And while he kind of turned the page for us as far as liking him, it still didn't cover up for the fact that at the time, with his video game adaptations that he was making, he was really just cranking out garbage. And he even admitted it. He's like, I was just doing them quickly, not cheaply, but just blasting them out. And Whereas Shyamalan, he puts a lot of effort into his works. He works with his director of photography and puts a lot of emphasis on framing and colors and things that you don't really see today with a lot of modern directors. A lot of modern directors are from the Michael Bay school of music video direction. So it's all a lot of shaky cam, a lot of quick shots of this, that, and the other thing, really fast editing. And his stuff has
And
these
lens flare.
yeah. Oh god. Yeah. That's the J.J. Abrams way. Let's go crazy with lens flare. Whereas Shyamalan puts a lot of effort into stuff. He has these really long shots, these really wide angles. Puts different color. Like each movie has like a color scheme, like theme. And they're really, regardless of the fact that whether or not the movie comes out and you like it, like there are some movies of his that I don't like, but I still appreciate the work that went into it. I think that sometimes it's just even though you might have a really good cast and a really good concept, sometimes movies just don't turn out all right because the producers get in there and meddle or what have you. But I think that he gets way too much flack for some reason. Somewhere around the village, like everyone turned on him. And now he just gets nothing but grief and the whole, what a twist thing that Robot Chicken did. And he just, I don't know. I don't think he should be lumped in with bad directors.
I think that the general consensus in terms of him is that for me anyway, when I look at movies, especially being someone who comes from an acting background, I direct, I write myself, and I find that there's either two schools, and as you've put it, there's the Michael Bay school of directing where it's more visuals, and then you have other directors who focus kind of on story and actors, and I think there's kind of a rare few storytellers. Like I'd always put Spielberg as one of those kind of rare storytellers who manages to get everything working in a movie. Ron Howard would probably be another one for me. The issue I have with Shyamalan and what his movies, for every movies like Sixth Sense, for instance, or for every movie like Unbreakable, he puts out a movie like Avatar, which you can clearly see is kind of rushed. The story's kind of lacking. He has no understanding of what he's actually involved in. It's more kind of
studios.
Not even what the studio wants, because I think if Nickelodeon kind of put their two hooks in it, they probably would have actually made it a lot more in tone with what they wanted in terms of series. He tends to kind of overshoot himself and says overreach. A lot of it was due to the fact that at one point he was even named like the next Spielberg. I think it was, I can't remember what magazine, I think it was Rolling Stone, kind of put him as the next Spielberg. He kind of put that whole presence on himself and decides, right, I want to do big and I want to do bigger. And sometimes with directors like Shyamalan is they tend to put it all out there, and without actually focusing on one thing, they try to scatter everything in the same kind of sequence. And even though it looks aesthetically, it looks pleasing, it looks really nice, you can tell that he's worked really hard on it, there's certain things that don't make sense. It's like when one of the movies that we're going to be discussing tonight, you tend to kind of look at it and think, okay, I can see what you're doing, I can see why you're doing it, but it doesn't make sense to me, and it takes you out of the film itself. Like as with Uwe Boll, where he just does whatever the fuck he wants and hopes, the movie actually does well for him. Like putting game screens in a House of the Dead movie, it's I can see where you can't compare him to those kind of bad directors, but you can also see why people have labelled him as a bad director, because he kind of just he's not symmetric with his film style and his filmmaking, and
he doesn't buck the Hollywood trend. That's why I think he gets lambasted with that statement, which is he clearly, regardless of the products he takes, projects he takes in whatever studio he's doing it, is you can clearly see that he never completely kisses the studio's ass, and every one of his movies, whether you like it or dislike it, he's 100% invested in it, and you can see him in it.
Definitely, and you gotta really respect that. And my thoughts on Shyamalan as a director is, I think he very much, in my opinion, mirrors. I want to compare him in a sense to George Lucas, where I think a guy like Shyamalan did a lot of great work early on, but I think as he's doing more and more work and he's staying more and more in Hollywood, I think a guy like him really could stand to maybe bring more people into his inner circle and maybe splay out some of the stuff that he does. I mean, I give him a lot of credit for the fact that he writes and directs every single movie that he does. I think, unlike Lucas, who doesn't, really bend to anybody and does whatever he wants, I think a guy like Shyamalan needs to find more similar-minded people to work with that I think can really harness his work. I think Shyamalan he needs more people to bounce ideas off of and flesh things out.
He was given more free role in his early days, I feel, than he is now, because now the studios think, or Hollywood thinks he's bankable. The pressure is upon him. But if you look at his early movies, where he was given a little bit more free reign, they were just more natural and flowed. Oh, by the way, I have to say, Miguel, really quickly, when you compare him to Lucas, I would just like to say, Shyamalan, by the way, thank you for still having a chin, unlike Lucas.
Well, let's start off with his early days work, because we all got to start somewhere. Shyamalan started, I believe, doing a film. It's a film with Rosie O'Donnell in it. I always forget what the name is, but that was his first film. I believe he was
Praying
just
with Anger.
What was that?
Praying with Anger.
Oh wow. I know it was.
What year is this?
I think it was
1992.
Oh, 92. Okay.
Yeah, 92 was his first one. The one you're thinking of with Rosie O'Donnell, that was Wide Awake.
Yeah, which I don't know if anybody's really seen that. I haven't, because it's a mid-90s Rosie O'Donnell movie, and I could do without.
I just generally avoid movies that she's in, sorry.
So
you're better off avoiding it. They're both fairly religious. They feel like very made-for-television movies. They're not bad, but they're like, you could tell he was a gun for hire. They needed to. It wasn't really his full involvement, or at least that's how it felt to me, anyway.
Well, you could say the same thing about his writing credit in Stuart Little in 1999. I think he was like one of five writers.
He was in the writing credit for that?
Yeah, he was one of the 5 writers that was credited for writing Stuart Little. You wouldn't know, honestly.
Well, it's kind of the same thing.
But then, where's the scene then? If he was one of the writing credits, where's the scene where Stuart Little looks in the mirror and sees a representation of his entire life as another individual that went bad? Like, really missed a trick there.
That would have been the greatest ending to that movie ever.
Yeah.
I think in terms of...
honestly, though, sorry, man, I just have to say, I honestly didn't know that. That's really made my day. He was on Stuart Little's writing cast. Oh my god! I'm going to die a happy man with a boner.
In terms of what Shyamalan did back then, a lot of it was kind of in symmetry to what Spielberg. It's kind of one of the reasons why they kind of compared him to Spielberg. Spielberg started off doing TV movies, adding a little writing credit here and there, and then like moving forward with his own directorial career. But you do see, like, as his career kind of extends forward, he went from just being a director from hire to having his own kind of little isms, so to speak, his own little tropes in his movies as he carries forward. So with this, I've seen it. It's kind of one of those things where it looks like a Lifetime movie of the week.
Are you talking about Wide Awake?
Yeah.
It's the best descriptive term I've ever heard.
Well, let's move on to the big one. This film... We did an episode a couple weeks back where we talked about The Matrix, and we talked about how a movie like that came literally from nothing and no heat coming in and became a pop culture hit. I can say the exact same thing about 1999's The Sixth Sense. No one really had any sort of vibe going in that this was going to be as big as it was, and this film really did earn its spot in pop culture history. I mean, everybody knows about The Sixth Sense. Everybody can quote all the big moments from The Sixth Sense. It is what it is. It is a pop culture. It's one of those films that everybody goes back to in pop culture and really pulls out. It as quoting Josh Hadley, it hit the cultural zeitgeist.
Definitely.
Cecil, why do you think that was the case? We'll start with you.
There's a lot of factors to it, and I mean this happens to some movies, like you said with The Matrix, and with something like Avatar, the James Cameron one, not the Airbender one. But it's just it came out at the right time. It was the right story, and it hit. It was just an amazing film that really I don't think anybody was expecting. I actually, unfortunately, I had somebody ruin it for me the day that I was going to see it.
That's a criminal offense.
Exactly. So I never had that big, like, oh my God, that everybody had, which I was really annoyed with. A guy at my work at the time, he had seen it the night before, and he's like,
he's no longer your friend, by the way.
He's no longer my friend. Not that, it's actually because he was a work friend, and I don't work there anymore. But it was so irritating. I actually came in the next day and yelled at him because I was like, "Why did you do?" Because what happened was he saw it the night before, and we were like, "Oh, you're going to go see The Sixth Sense tonight." He's like, "Oh man, it was such a good movie, and you'll never believe the ending. You won't see it coming."
I'm cringing already.
And whenever someone says that, you're constantly on the lookout. Had I had not known, I wouldn't have been. I mean, I'd be paying attention to the movie, but not looking. And then
he's Homer Simpson, isn't he? In the lineup, yeah.
Where he's walking through.
Who would have believed that fucking Darth Vader was Luke Skywalker's dad?
Yeah. Oh, thanks, Mr. Ruin the movie guy. But yeah. So I'm watching the movie, and about halfway through it, I'm like, oh, it hit me. And that's when, and then as the rest of the movie went by, I started to see all the little, drops that you noticed the second time that you were watching it. So I really kind of I still thought that the movie was great, but I kind of got gypped.
Have you ever run into that guy again, by the way, for no reason? Like, just give him a massive dead arm twice, punch him in the arm twice, and just go, "That's still for The Sixth Sense, you bitch."
Yeah, I want to just keep a list of movies in my wallet and then just walk up to, "Oh yeah, here," and then just start rattling off all these spoilers.
Well, it's funny we mentioned the whole pop culture thing because I mean there are a few endings to movies that everybody just knows. Everybody knows that Planet of the Apes is actually Earth. Everybody knows that Soylent Green is people.
Is it? Sorry, bad joke.
Rosebud.
Yeah, Rosebud. But yeah, Sixth Sense is one of those. I mean, it's
are they actually eating people in Soylent Green? Sorry.
That's what. Yeah.
Well, it's processed people, but it's people.
Yeah, this. Everybody knows the ending, and it's one of those things to where it would be really hard nowadays.
Let me just say this, Miguel. I don't mean to cut you off. I promise I wouldn't, but I just have to say this for the perspective of people listening to this, which is spoilers. Just be aware.
Yeah, there's going to be spoilers in this because you got to when it comes to Shyamalan. So yeah, just cover your ears or mute the recording. But in this case, everybody knows about Bruce Willis being dead. Burhan, I want to throw it over to you and see if you can answer these two. The first one is obviously, why do you think the movie hit as hard as it did and became the pop culture phenomenon? And two, what was your thoughts when you saw the ending? Like, how much did it floor you?
It surprised me a lot, but I could. There were certain elements that kind of I saw it coming in a sense. It was like it's one of those where you sat there and went, 1 second, something seems a bit off. But then when it happened, it gave that kind of mirrored Memento type feel to it, where the focus of the main character being like the child, which I believe it was Haley Joel Osment, wasn't he? That was the kid in that, yeah. And then
before he was massively annoying and whining.
Yeah, and then
now he's just massive.
Yeah, and then focusing kind of that whole like main character focus on Bruce Willis's character. When that all came together, it kind of answered so many questions that you had going into the film. It kind of allowed you to understand the whole kind of universe and what was going on. And I think it was the perfect twist. It gave that nice little caveat, in a sense, to the film in its own right. It's like having the icing on the cake, so to speak. It was subtle. It was well built. And the way that the pacing kind of built the story up allowed the viewer to kind of be immersed in it. So when they threw that spanner in the works, it gave you that big surprise, but it also, it gave you that satisfying ending. And I think that's that was the great thing about this film, and it's kind of what catapulted M Night Shaymalan to that kind of meteoric success, because he built something like this. You know, you could tell the story was so well versed, it was so well loved, it was so well presented, and everything was in unison, because, you know, Bruce Willis himself is a very, very good actor when he wants to be, when he's not going around shooting stuff saying yippee-ki-yay every 5 minutes. He's really, really good at what he does, and this was kind of a meaty role that allowed him to kind of play a character that not many would see him synonymous with. And Haley Joel Osment was pretty good as well, because all he had to do was just be a frightened little kid, and he did it really well in that. So I feel everything kind of built it up in unison to allow this story to play off so well. And you know, it for me, it gave that satisfying dramatic effect, because I went and saw it in the cinema. I loved every minute of it. I came out like with my freaking eyebrows to the wall. You know, I was sitting there wanting to talk to someone about it at the end. It was so satisfying, and I never lost it never took me away from that movie. I managed to immerse myself in it. So I think with that level of immersion, with the way the story was built, the way the characters were layered, it managed to build up that overall experience and allowed the movie to shine the way it was supposed to.
Dave, what about you? What did you think of the ending, and why do you think this movie hit pop culture as hard as it did?
I was very, very lucky, because and Cecil talked about the colors in the movie, which were brilliant. The way that, you know, if you watch it back, sorry people, spoilers, the same 4 colors are used again and again and again and again. But I was very lucky to see this movie. That I went on holiday to Toronto at the time, so it was not shown in the UK, and I knew nothing about it. So I got to walk into the movie theater and literally watch it with no expectations whatsoever, which I think is the greatest way to experience this movie. Unfortunately, you could never get that now. And I just remember thinking, this movie is absolutely amazing. It's like, is this Hollywood making this? Because this is, you know, this is why, you know, he set his standards so high as director. I just thought it was a breath of fresh air. It was brilliant. You can tell it transcended pop culture, because in the British TV show Spaced, they got his girlfriend back to replicate one of their lines in their show, which is, you know, when they run over a bike, and I see dead people. There was a girl. She was hit by a car. Really? Yeah, she's outside the window right now. And you people have no appreciation for cyclists. All right. And then they drive off, run over a car. But there was nothing like this movie in Hollywood at the time. It was, you know, I dare I say this to sound like I'm not lambasting, I hope I don't lambast the intelligence of moviegoers, but there was no thinking man's movie in Hollywood at the time. It was all, look at me, we got to play, you know, catch up to the Phantom Menace. Everyone's got shiny special effects and a lightsaber, and it was just well written, well thought out, deep, dark, intelligent, and the ending. The ending took me 3 times to watch to truly appreciate. Even though I got it in the cinema, and I was like I said, I was like Homer walking out of that cinema that day, just going, "Oh my God, he's dead." It was a breath of fresh air for the simple fact that compared to all the other cannon fodder that was in the cinemas at the time, it was just deep, very, very well written. It's got so much replay value. Like you can just. I just made it sound like a video game. You can just watch that movie again and again and again. And one of the greatest things that when I had it the DVD, and I missed this at the time, and they point out in the special features, which is before you know he's dead. Check out the fact that Bruce Willis has the same wardrobe in the entire movie. He just wears it in different combinations, and you're like, oh my God, yes, because he's a ghost. And it's just, I made it sound really cheap then, but just, I don't know. I think this was a wake-up call for Hollywood, which is, do you know what, people? Let's go back to the old-school traditional movies of the 40s and 50s, which is, it's all about suspense and a payoff at the end, as opposed to shiny special effects and look at me, I got a Millennium Falcon, if that makes sense.
Well, it's funny you mention Hollywood trusting Shyamalan or seeing any future in him, because it was actually the opposite. He originally pitched the movie to Disney, and Disney, even though they liked the script, had such little faith in them. They actually, I believe, sold the rights to it to Spyglass, which was like a third-party publisher.
So they actually owned it, and then
they actually were going to be the producers for it, and then they didn't have much faith in it, so they got Spyglass Entertainment to produce it, and they only held on to the distribution rights. So after the fact, Disney would obviously.
Pretty sure they're very glad they did.
No. Well, yeah, I'm sure Spyglass is happy that they got the production rights, but yeah, Disney would obviously work more closely with Shyamalan in his next few projects. We'll talk about that when we get later. But yeah, for me, when I first saw the movie in '99, I was young. I was about 10, I believe, or 10 or 11. So I don't think I appreciated.
Thank you for making me feel very old, by the way.
I don't think I appreciated the film as much back then because I was just so young. It didn't faze me as much. I'm sure if I'd have seen it now or in my late teens or early 20s, I probably would have been blown away. I'm not saying the movie's bad at all. I love the movie. I think it's great. I've actually gone back and watched it, and I think it really holds up well. But it didn't. The ending, it was a neat little twist for me, but I was so young, it didn't like blow me away. It would be like if I tried watching Fight Club at the time. Like the twist there probably wouldn't have blown me away as much either. But now I think it's brilliant. I will say one of the things that I think really helped with Shyamalan. Well, before I get into that, you mentioned how no one else was doing this at the time. Keep in mind, this was 1999. I think we were just hitting the twilight years of the slasher boom. I think by this point, I Still Know What You Did Last Summer had just come out. I don't believe Urban Legend Final Cut had just come out yet, which is the movie that most people say killed that genre. But yeah, to come off of something like that, which was a hit, and then to see something like this, it was such a breath of fresh air. It was a movie that any other time probably may not have been as big, but because it hit at that time where there was really nothing else, it really did floor people. And I think one of the big things that helps the movie, in my opinion, and I mention this because I think as the years go by, it'll actually be a detriment, is the style of writing for Shyamalan. The one thing I love about the movie in terms of the tone is that it almost has an uneasy feeling. The way people deliver their lines in the movie, I wouldn't say wooden, I would say stilted. You feel like uneasy when people deliver their lines in that movie. And I think to that movie's credit, it actually improves the movie. It makes it uncomfortable to watch in a good way. And that's what I think really helps the mood of the film. As we'll get further and further, I think that style will actually hold Shyamalan back, but we'll get to that. But this movie was a massive hit for Shyamalan. I mean, it was huge.
What was it? What was its gross, and what did it cost?
Let me go back to that. It was on a $40 million budget. It made $672 million worldwide.
Wow.
It was a massive hit. It's one of those things where I really wish this had been his first movie. Geek Juice Media actually did a series called Cherry Poppin' Films where they talk about directors' first films. It's kind of like how I wish that Alien 3 wasn't David Fincher's first film, and we could talk about how Seven was his big breakout, first film. I really wish Sixth Sense was Shyamalan's true first film. I mean, he's got that Rosie O'Donnell movie and the one before it, but I'd love to think that Sixth Sense is his first true film. This is the one that.
It's his first cinematic film, so you can sit there and say this was the film that made Shyamalan. Everything else was kind of irrelevant that came before.
Yeah.
So, even though it wasn't his first film, it was the film that made his career, that basically got people talking.
Definitely. So let's move on to the next. Oh, you were going to say something?
One quick thing I just wanted to throw in. What really surprised me was that, like you guys had said, Sixth Sense came out, and it was such a throwback because it was this really well written, really intense movie that we hadn't seen in a while, and you would think that that was would usher in a new era of that kind of movie. And 2 months after Sixth Sense came out, a movie called Stir of Echoes came out with Kevin Bacon.
Oh, that was a brilliant movie.
Exactly. It was a brilliant movie that made about $1.50. It was like
That's one
I
of
have
those cringeworthy moments in the world where he's so
with the
pensive,
fingernail.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Oh, it's so horrible.
So horrifying.
And
but
the
it's
bit when they put him
such-
under the trance and they put the needle through and shit. Oh,
Oh
fuck.
yeah. Oh god. Yeah. It's such a good movie, and it does. It just so happens that it came out right around the same time, but it's similar.
People call it a knockoff,
theme.
but it's
people
not.
call it a knockoff, but it's yeah. People totally called it. Oh, people don't understand.
Oh, can I just say? I think me and Cecil are agreement on this. If you have not seen Stir of Echoes, it's one of the greatest. I wouldn't say a horror movie, but just
Thriller.
Thriller. How do I put it? Supernatural-ish movie. It's got some that, like we just said, which is the fact that we both jumped to that point, which is like the fingernail bit and stuff. It's an absolutely underrated gem, but it got lambasted because everyone just went, "Oh, it's a knockoff for Sixth Sense," and it's like, no, it wasn't. It was produced along the same time, and they had no idea what they were doing. Don't write it off unless you've seen it, because it's an absolutely underappreciated gem. It's such a good movie.
Yeah, it gets way too little love,
Yeah.
and it's not the fault of Sixth Sense. I mean, it's just unfortunate that it will always be compared to it. And it's not fair because you're actually doing kind of a disservice to both movies. Just because they both came out roughly the same time doesn't mean that, it's the same thing or that one is the knockoff film. It just so, I mean, if Stir of Echoes had come out before Sixth Sense, it probably...
Can you buy it on Blu-ray? I think I really need to see that movie again. Can you buy it on Blu-ray? Is it like a super whammy?
Actually, because I'm looking at the Blu-ray right now.
Nice. Oh, gonna get it. And you know what the really thing is? When a movie really, really affects you, talking about this movie, I'm looking at my fingernails.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, fingernails and eyes are kind of clinchers for me. Like if there's a movie and they do something, if they yank a fingernail or they poke something in the eye, I just wince. But yeah, if you have not seen Stir of Echoes, don't read anything about it. Just go rent it, buy it.
Stay completely oblivious to it and just go in and watch it, because it will warp your tiny little minds.
Mm-hmm.
So let's move on to 2000, Shyamalan's follow-up to The Sixth Sense.
Can I just say one thing? Now
Sure.
we're talking about
Unbreakable.
Stir of Echoes. I was just going to say, everybody cut Footloose. Sorry.
All right, let's move on to 2000, Shyamalan's follow-up film, which is Unbreakable. And I'm going to back out of this one because this is one of the few films of his I have not seen. My parents had it.
Too.
Yeah, my parents had it. I've seen bits of it. It didn't draw me in as much as The Sixth Sense did. So I kind of just avoided it just out of not having a desire to watch it. Cecil, what did you think of Unbreakable?
A lot of people consider Unbreakable to be Shyamalan's best movie. I like it a lot. I'm really torn. I actually don't even know what I would put as his best, because I like all of his movies. Well, the movies of his that I like for different reasons. But Unbreakable, it was a very serious comic book movie, and that was
so cool.
what. Yeah, I mean, it basically was the comic book movie if everything was more or less kind of, for lack of a better explanation, grounded in reality. Like this, it was very serious. Here's this guy getting his powers, and here is here's a villain, but he's kind of coming into his own. And again, very well directed, really interesting. It was kind of a slower movie, and I think that's what a lot of people, the people who didn't care for it, just they didn't like the pacing of it very much. But I liked it a lot. I think that it's a really, really cool movie, and I think you should give it a chance. I think you would probably enjoy it more than you think. There's no there's no real out of left field things so much like The Sixth Sense, where the stuff that happens in Unbreakable, you do see it coming. It doesn't make it any less enjoyable, but it's still it's a good movie. I really like it.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, I'm not. I was gonna say I'm not. I didn't say that I was avoiding it because I thought it was bad. It just for some reason never drew me in. But yeah, I might have to put that on my to-do list. Burhan, you were gonna say something?
Yeah,
you were gonna give your thoughts?
I agree with Cecil. It's one of those things where the movie is a superhero movie, but it has a more realistic approach to it. It's like Sam Jackson's character, and he first takes on the role of kind of the Charles Xavier-esque person. You know, he's finding Bruce Willis. He's nurturing his powers, and he knows who he is. Willis kind of sees himself as an abnormality, as someone who he doesn't want to like let the world know who he is because he thinks he's going to be kind of shunned for it. He has that whole kind of Peter Parker-esque vibe to him as the guy kind of tortured by his own superpowers. Then you watch him mature, you watch him get stronger, and there's that nice little bonding story between father and son, him and his kid kind of bonding over the fact that he's becoming this thing. It's kind of, you know, you see a kind of a mirrored version of it in like The Incredibles, in a sense. You know, he's getting stronger, he's becoming something more, and as he's being nurtured, he's being brought to a kind of a point. The pacing is really slow because of the movie itself, because it kind of, it knows what it's doing, but it doesn't know what it wants to be, in a sense. You know, you have all these kind of interlinking stories going at the same time, which Shyamalan's pretty good at, kind of like branching them off, in a sense. It has that rather sort of subtle, dark, depressing tone to it as well. You can see it's very bleak, you know, very colourless. It's a world that's painted with all kind of shades of grey. You know, the way it's framed and the way it's shot, it kind of has that whole like hopeless kind of life mentality. You know, it's the kind of thing that we're experiencing at the moment in terms of the way that the world is viewed from the recession, in a sense. And you even see, like, to the point where he gets his first, he first becomes a hero. The papers report, you know, his deed when he finds this man with the aid of Jackson's character, who's like this big kind of, he's like a demented serial killer, in a sense. He kills the person in this house. Willis goes in for the save. He does his first like superhero act, and then the kind of the climax gets all revealed at the end. Again, that you have that Shyamalan twist when Jackson reveals himself to be Mr. Glass. He's like, you are kind of the yin to my yang, in a sense. So it's like their destinies are interjoined.
The anti-Xavier, if you will.
Yeah. And in turns, instead of being Xavier, he's Magneto. You know, he's like, I'm evil with a purpose. There's a reason why I'm evil, to make you good.
To propel you.
Yeah, and it's such a great ending. And when it hits that ending, you go from the slow pace into kind of the big, you know, push, in a sense. It brings the two characters together. Samuel Jackson has never been better in terms of his acting. And for me, he was so impressive in this movie. He plays the villain, and he plays that quiet, desperate villain so well, because he goes from being kind of the mentor, the geeky guy, the guy who was always bullied, to this demented, crazed maniac within seconds of revealing himself. You know, Willis's character was always kind of the straight edge, you know, the guy who never wanted the world to see him, and then once he realized who Jackson was, you could see like all the color kind of lose from his face, you know, what he did to those people. And when Jackson sees everything as kind of a necessity, Willis's character sees everything as like, my God, you're a fucking monster. And it's brilliant. It's from, you know, where you have Sixth Sense has its own kind of style and own direction. This movie has a kind of a different vibe to it altogether. And again, I think it's one of those Shyamalan movies where it's severely underrated, because you do have a lot of people who love it or hate it. It's kind of a Marmite flavoured movie. But for me, as a superhero movie, I would put it on top, like with some of the bigger superhero movies. You know, it's a movie with context.
Quick boring interjection. What was its gross, and what did it, cost to make?
Let me pull that up real quick. Probably couldn't have been too expensive. $75 million budget, made $248 million at the box office. So a drastic step down in box office. I mean, it pretty much made a third of what Sixth Sense made, for, I believe, a third more of what it cost. So it was a sharp decline in terms of money. What's your thoughts on it, Dave? Have you seen Unbreakable?
I loathe this movie, and I've got a love-hate relationship with this movie, which is I loathe this movie, but from just listening to Bohan talk about it, there are scenes in this movie that I absolutely adore and just elevate my spirit. But I think, and you can call me shallow, and I think this might be why it had the massive step down in box office, which is people expected more of the same from Sixth Sense, but because he was a credible director, he was just in it for himself and did as he should be and did what he wanted to do. So I didn't enjoy this movie, but there are bits in this movie I adore, and I love the whole kind of it felt like I don't know if I should say this, which is did Shyamalan actually read The Watchmen? Because the fact that he decided to make a serious superhero movie, I feel there's nods of that in there. I think it was probably before its time, in the sense that Hollywood wasn't really ready for a serious sort of superhero movie, because everyone should be shiny and fantastic and in spandex, and there's deep plots and stuff in this movie, and it may have went over a lot of the heads, and obviously Hollywood just wants bankable. But when I say I loathe this movie, that might be a descriptive term too strong, because I didn't like this movie, but as I said, I adore bits in it. But to me, the greatest bit about this movie is the ending. And sorry, people, spoilers. And well, Burhan already spoiled it for you. But when it all comes to fruition and it pays out, and you understand the real, protagonist behind this movie, and like who's driving all the events of it, and it's Samuel Jackson, just like. Well, and it's the traditional. Dare I say traditional? Because that sounds like a sweeping statement of obviousness. But just I do adore the ending of this movie, where everything falls into place, and you look at the poor, confused expression on Bruce Willis's face, and yeah. So that was the most incoherent, untangible thing I've ever said, that entire rant. But yeah, I don't like this movie, but I do enjoy massive amounts of moments of it, and the ending to me is absolutely superb, and it is, which you don't get very often in Hollywood, particularly then, because what is this, 1990?
2000.
2000. It's an adult superhero movie, which was absolutely unheard of then.
Actually, considering it was 2000, it was 2 years after Batman and Robin, so superhero movies were pretty much dead by this point. I think that might have had
it was a bold direction for them to try and take, if you think about anything, which is they were right to do such, but even though I don't like it, I'm just saying they were right to do such, because at that point, as you said, Batman and Robin, I think I was just sick in my mouth again. Superhero movies were completely dead at that point. So yeah.
I mean, if you're going to do a superhero movie if you're going to do an anti-superhero movie of sorts, and I say anti in quotes, this would probably have been the best point, because this is where you could go off script as much. Unbreakable.
Like I said, I don't. When I say I don't like it, I just don't like it in the sense it's not my movie of the month. But I can be an adult and look at it and say I enjoy moments of it. It just, what I mean. I don't hate it. It's just it doesn't tickle my fancy.
You're babbling, so I think we get the concept. I'm going to give it a shot, because as recently I've seen some of his movies recently that have kind of turned me around. Let's go on to what I'm going to honestly say is my favorite film of his. I watched this movie in theaters. There was a period when it came out on DVD. I saw this movie 1,000 times on DVD. I would probably say this is the movie more than anything else that probably feels the most Spielbergian, to quote a phrase, and that is 2002's Signs. It really does have a feeling of an early 80s Steven Spielberg film. Like, honestly, if it wasn't
Thank you for that, by the way. Thank you, because I've always thought that.
I mean, if it wasn't Mel Gibson in the title role and they'd have done this in the 80s, it would have been like Jeff Bridges or Kevin Costner in that role. Like, I could have seen either one of those back then in that role. I like the fact that it's an alien invasion movie that really focuses on one family. You get a very small town, middle America feel from this, and I think that's what really makes it feel a lot like a Spielberg film, because that's what a lot of his films dealt with in the early '80s. I think there's a lot really good about this. I think the scenes that are meant to be scary are scary. I think the character.
Do you mean
fits,
the door scene? With the
the-
hand under the door?
Oh, that scene, yeah, the hand under the door scene. I'm thinking the newscast scene where Joaquin Phoenix is in the closet. That one moment, and if you've seen the movie, you know what moment I'm talking about. Gets me still. It really does feel like probably I would say his most polished film. It feels like that one film that I think is the middle ground between a lot of his most extreme fans and a lot of maybe the casual fans. I think this is probably his most populist film, in my opinion. I know Sixth Sense gets a lot of people and it has its pop culture place, but I would say this is probably the closest thing that Shyamalan has made to a popcorn movie of sorts, and that's what it feels like to me. It feels like a Spielberg era popcorn movie of sorts. That doesn't mean it's a bad film at all. I think the film is great, and I want to really stress that out because Signs, especially since Doug Walker did the review of it, which really irritated me, Signs is kind of one of those films that gets lumped in when people talk about the fall of M. Night Shyamalan, and I think that's unfair. I really do think this movie definitely stands head and shoulders up with something like Sixth Sense and Unbreakable. I really do adore this movie. Cecil, what's your thoughts on Signs?
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic movie. Unfortunately, like you were saying with Doug Walker, there's nothing wrong with people like watching his stuff and enjoying it. I mean, that's fine. I always get bothered by people that will take like his word as gospel. It's like, well, because I've done some movies and people will be like, Nostalgia Critic said this movie sucked. Well, how about you make up your own mind? He's doing a show and you can, I mean, there are stuff that you can watch and you can agree or disagree or enjoy his poking fun at it, but still like the movie. But onto the movie itself, I think it's all the things you said. It's very well done. It's very deliberately paced. It's very creepy and atmospheric. And I still like. I know M. Night has never officially come out and spoken about it, but I really am going towards the whole they're not aliens, they're demons theory. Ooh. Which, if you look at, I mean, how the whole religious themes of the film, it's all about the Mel Gibson rediscovering, God through the film, and there's so many elements that really make it more like demons. You don't. I mean, the aliens themselves, they look like demons. The marks that are the signs in the cornfields are actually like runes where the aliens are or where the demons are kind of coming through. It also explains why, if it's not just water that is damaging them, it's actually holy water. Because if when they're out, like there's a part earlier in the film where where they're being chased through the fields and the alien demon whatever is kind of splashing through like puddles and it's not hurting it. But then at the end of the film, he's hitting, he's doing the whole swing away thing and he's being hit with all the water. Well, he blessed his house, so all the water in the house will be holy water. So I don't know. It seems too much to be a coincidence. And I'm not really a religious person at all. I just really think that is a cool interpretation, and it does seem very much like something that Shyamalan would do, where it would be you think that it's aliens, but it's actually demons, and this is all about this family and Mel Gibson claiming his faith. I just think that's really cool, and it's just a really good movie. And like you said, also, this was for some reason the turning point where people started to say that M. Night sucked, which was really weird because I saw it twice in the theater, and both times people were applauding the film after it was over. So it it's very odd, the revisionist history.
That's a very American thing, because if you applaud a movie in this country in the theater, everyone just goes, "Shut up!" Sorry.
It is very odd, but I mean, I've been to a bunch of movies where people will applaud the movie after it's over, and yeah, it's like, well, who are you applauding? The projectionist, because
Yeah.
but it is what it is. People really liked it.
Sorry, I didn't mean that to be a crass pop at North America.
No. It's perfectly. Believe me, it confuses me as well. But sometimes, you watch a movie and it's so good that you feel compelled to do something, and then everybody starts applauding.
We just stand up at the end with a stiff upper lip and just go, "Who wants a cup of tea?"
and go, "Merci."
We're not all Bond villains, by the way.
Yeah. By the way, you guys are from.
I will say this about that theory. It's an interesting theory. The only real issue I have about it is that it really does takes the scope of the movie down a bit, because, like I said, one of the things I liked about the movie was it was this big. It seemed like a big global invasion story told from the eyes of just one group of people. If you put it in the sense of demons, it kind of, I don't know. To me, it makes the world feel a little bit smaller, because then it just feels like it's an issue with just these people. It kind of shrinks the world down a little bit. I'm gonna look more into it, because I've actually only briefly heard of this theory, but that's just my view on it. But I still love the movie. Burhan, what's your thoughts on Signs?
I didn't really like this movie, to tell you the truth, and a lot of it, I think, was because I could not focus my attention on it. I was very withdrawn from it. Again, the pacing was okay. The way that the shots, the way it was framed, it seemed like it was pretty decent. I just felt that it was lacking a lot. I do like, Cecil's concept a lot better. The fact that there were demons, it would make a heck of a lot more sense. I just didn't. It wasn't able to capture my attention like his previous movies were. I felt it's because he went far too out of the box, and the characters weren't relatable. Like, I can see Gibson's character like battling with his need to stay in the church.
Really?
His need
not relatable.
Not relatable.
I thought he was quite humble in. I had attachment to him in this movie.
He seemed a lot more childlike. Joaquin Phoenix's character seemed he was supposed to be kind of you could tell he was the very childish, kind of person who has that big thing about being able to kind of swing. He reminded me a lot of like Lenny of Mice and Men, in a sense, because he was just a bit out there-ish in terms of his sensibilities, his normal faculties. But it really didn't seem much of a focal point. It was nothing I could kind of hook myself into. The kid seemed, for me, it seemed like a lot of it was being told from the child's eyes, like it was a children's story. But again, it didn't really hook me as well much. I think a lot of it was just due to the fact that I just found that the movie was just too slow. The characters didn't latch on to me, and in terms of writing, I just felt that Shyamalan didn't really want to know what he wanted to try and do with this movie. It seemed about one thing, then it became about something else, in a sense. He, again, as I said, he's good about telling all these stories at once, but he's kind of not good when he's trying to do an overarching story that reaches into something else. And just, I think it just killed any momentum this movie had for me. And Dave, elephant in the room.
Oh, hang on, sorry. By the way, Cecil, elephant in the room is when my fan on my really old laptop kicks in, so we say elephant in the room as opposed to saying, Dave, sort your shit computer out.
Gotcha.
So, Dave, what was your thoughts of Signs?
I actually saw it in the theaters, and I wanted to hate it, because I just thought, this is too far, like, really? Shyamalan, you're going to do Aliens? But I really enjoyed it, and I disagree with Burhan in, the character establishment and stuff like that. I thought it was really, really well done, and the greatest thing I loved about this movie, and I'll go with you on this, Miguel, which is it did feel, if this was made in the 80s, it would have been like, I don't know, a semi-unofficial sequel to Third Encounters or something. It did feel very Spielberg-esque. And I just enjoyed it. I thought, the story went out well, and the way they, the fact that, what harms the aliens and stuff like that, it was just, I'm trying really hard not to babble, but I just thought it was a really good, solid movie with great scares, and you watch the entire thing, you get to the end, and you just went, that was an entire process thought about in itself, which was coherent in the sense that the start matches the end, and brilliant. Loved it, really liked it. Great scares, great stuff, great character establishment, and yeah, and it really bugs me. And I didn't know the demon thing that Cecil said about, but I'm going to have to watch it again now with that in mind. But it really bugs me that people say, like, oh, it's one of his weakest movies. I'm like, really? Look at the tat that Hollywood puts out. This is a really good, solid movie. The only problem I have with this movie, if I can be an asshole for a second, is I don't like Mel Gibson because he's an anti-Semitic prick. But there you go.
Yeah, you got to look past that. I mean, Gibson's done some great works. I mean, I loved him in Expendables 3. I thought he was one of my favorite characters in that movie. I mean, that movie's
I haven't seen that yet, so
it's not bad. I know a lot of people give it flack. It really isn't that bad of a film.
I would like to say quickly about going back to Signs, which is even though I took you on that tangent, so I do apologize. Which is the bits when he runs through the cornfields, and this sounds really, really stupid. Just great cinematography that may have given me a Woody at the time, but never mind.
It's like I said, I mean, Shyamalan, whether you have issues with his writing style, which I do, a lot of his later works, the guy knows how to work a camera. There's some really interesting shots that he uses in Signs that I really like. I know Nostalgia Critic talked about his use of pan shots, that he used it a little bit too much. I kind of like that, the whole slow pan kind of thing.
Do you know what? I like Nostalgia Critic, and I haven't seen what he said about this movie, but I'll go with Cecil on this, which is, and I said, I like him because I got him to sign my DVD of his, but I don't like the fact that someone takes a internet reviewer's word by law, and therefore they will never afford a movie a chance to be good because it just went, you said it was shit, don't like it.
We'll get into that in a bit because I really want to talk about that when we get past this next film. I do want to say before we get on to The Village, we do have to bring up what a lot of people consider the real big reason why he fell, which was the buried secrets of M Knight Shaymalan.
See, I've missed this, right? Because I'm not his diehard. I mean, I like to think I'm diehard film guy, but I'm not as diehard for him. But when you keep, all of you keep talking about when he fell. What is this?
A lot of people say that his movies as of late have been really lackluster, and we'll get more into that. But people, I mean, keep in mind, like I said, by the time Signs came out, he was considered the next Spielberg. Now at this point, he's kind of, at best, maybe a hired gun to most people, and at least a bit of a laughing stock. He's kind of become a punchline for, once successful filmmakers who are kind of no longer in the limelight. So when I'm
not invested into his material as much as you guys, but is his career really in that state right now? Like, surely his name still commands some sort of respect and money from Hollywood, or
he's in hired gun mode right now. He's very much in hired gun mode. I mean, he's got a movie coming out in 2015, which I'll mention when we get to it. But right now, if you look at his last, I'd say 2 films, he's a hired gun at this point. He hasn't built up his credibility yet in Hollywood, but we'll get to that when we get to it. Next up is, well, before we get to 2004's The Village, I do want to bring up the documentary that was made before that, which is what many people consider to be the moment where he kind of jumped the shark, which was The Buried Secrets of M Knight Shaymalan, which was a documentary, in quotes, that Sci-Fi Channel put out. And I'd only heard about this, but apparently it was...
Can I find this on YouTube?
Yeah, you can find parts of it, I believe. I haven't had a chance to see it, but supposedly what it was it was supposed to be a behind-the-scenes look at the making of The Village. And it was supposed to be this, documentarian was going to ask about M. Night Shyamalan's background, and he was going to find out all of these secrets. And so they decided as a guerrilla tactic to promote the film to make it seem like, oh, this is an unlicensed documentary. He shouldn't have heard the stuff he did. and they put out all sorts of press releases, and there was all this hype behind, the
So they went
unauthorized.
Blair Witch.
Exactly. In fact, a lot of people quote that when they talk about it. It was supposed to be this big unauthorized documentary that Sci-Fi had got a hold of. Turns out that wasn't the case. It was actually a joint venture with Shyamalan and Sci-Fi. Sci-Fi actually got in so much trouble they had to put out press releases saying, "Yeah, we thought we were helping Shyamalan promote The Village, and we're distancing ourselves from it." I think this is one of the first few straws in the camel's back for Disney, which would lead later on after The Village. But yeah, this was kind of it made him a bit of a laughing stock, and I think that hurt The Village, in my opinion, to an extent. Going into it.
Sorry, being anal bloke. What was it production, and what did it gross?
The Village?
Yeah.
The Village. Let me go on to that. Actually, I didn't mention Sign's budget. This was actually a big step up. $72 million budget, made $408 million at the box office. So it made twice as much, a little bit rounded off, that Unbreakable did. So this was actually, like I said, it was M Night Shyamalan's first true popcorn movie, in my opinion, and it shows. It really was a very populist movie. 2004's The Village. Let's see, budget of $60 million, made $256 million, so another step down. I've only ever seen this movie once, and I remember just being largely bored by the film. I don't know, the performances just didn't really draw me in. I thought the actual story elements, the supernatural elements, were kind of weak. And the ending, it wasn't even that it was a twist ending. It was just kind of just an ending that was just off. I wasn't surprised at it. I was just like, oh, okay, you're just going to end it like that.
Ooh,
I would
harsh.
I would say out of all of his other films, this is probably the most forgettable. I really can't say much about The Village because I don't really remember too much about it. Cecil, what's your thoughts on The Village?
I liked it. I actually, I was a fan of M Night, but like for whatever reason, I really wasn't too interested in this because it just seemed like I was like, oh, it's going to be like an old timey kind of movie, and I don't know. For the trailers didn't really sell me on it, and I kind of went into the theater begrudgingly, not like going in to hate it, but just like, it's probably going to be a well done movie, but not necessarily like something I would really go out of my way to see. But I ended up enjoying it. I thought that it was cool. I liked the concept of it. I think that the way that they kind of played everything out was good. I wasn't particularly crazy about Joaquin's character. I thought that he was a little he was more annoying than anything because he just kind of whispered the whole movie. Why would you say that to me? Why would you do that? And it just it was like, yeah. I mean, I kind of get what they were going for, but I liked it, and I don't think that. Again, I don't think that it deserves the bashing that it gets. I don't think that it is a bad made movie at all. It's just, especially when, I mean, there are movies like Big Mama's House doesn't get as much hate as something like The Village, which I just baffles me. So it's like
I think I can answer that. I think the reason Big Mama's House doesn't get much flack is because Big Mama's House tends to target a certain audience, whereas The Village is a much more quote unquote populist film. I think when you consider the target, and God, I gotta really watch my words with what I'm about to say, but when you look at the film, when you look at the accompanying films that tend to target that audience... Be careful,
Miguel, it's the internet. People
I gotta be careful what I'm about to say, so I gotta be vague. When you consider the films that quote-unquote audience tends to target... they're a little bit more easygoing with Big Mama's House because it just is the way it is, whereas The Village was more populous. And like I said, it's coming off of Signs, which was Shyamalan's peak. So you know how the internet works. If you can't keep up that string, if you're not constantly rising, you're falling. That's basically what people like to think.
Yeah, that's fair, and it's really frustrating because you'll have be it anyone in Hollywood, and it's got to drive them nuts because let's say they just had 5 huge movies and then one movie that doesn't do well. They're like, is blah blah blah's career over? And it's like, oh my god, like let them have a bad movie or something. But they're so cutthroat they're always looking to throw somebody under the bus, and oh, their career's over. They made one crappy film that a couple people didn't like, and so. But the Village, I think, is a cool movie, and I dig the aesthetic of it, and I liked that there were two reveals. I liked how it was like you find out that the time frame, and then at the end when they you find out that what the demons really are, and I thought it was cool. I thought it was good.
Burhan, what's your thoughts on The Village?
I didn't watch it. I just after Signs, I kind of went, yeah, I think I've had enough of Shyamalan to last me a century. I just saw the trailer for it. I looked at it and I was like, yeah. And I believe that film was actually produced by UTV, wasn't it? UTV Motion Pictures, for those who don't know, are a Indian motion picture development company. They specialize in Indian and Korean movies. So Shyamalan kind of signed a deal with them in order to produce it, and I just sat there. I was like, "Yeah, I don't see any substance."
I'm gonna make a non-martial art movie for primarily martial art.
I kind of knew what he was trying to do. This film was going to kind of be more of an art house film for him. But when he did that,
couldn't you argue that's all his movies, though? Technically, if I had to put a stamp on him, I would say he's an art house director.
I wouldn't. Per se, but I think this was kind of him saying, I want control of my entire movie. And when that came about, I just looked at it and I just thought, this is him going to the well a bit too much. I'm staying clear of it, and I haven't watched it since. I did go back to him when he did the Avatar movie, just because I was a fan of the series, and I regret that. But we can talk about that when we actually talk about that movie.
Definitely. Dave, what's your thoughts on The Village?
I adored this movie. I thought it was brilliant. It sounds stupid, but I enjoy movies that kind of go back to a more innocent time, ignoring all the events that happened in this movie. But I kind of really, really, really like this. And the first time I saw this, ironically, which made the reveal even greater at the end, was I was on a flight to Boston, and it was the in-flight movie, and it was just made the the reveal at the end that much better. But I really enjoyed it. I thought great characters. The whole kind of who we should fear and stuff, and the blind chick, and that was kind of very relevant to the fact that hysteria against racism in the people who are homophobic. I just find it relevant to the life at the time, and I just really, really enjoyed it, and I loved it. And the reveal to me was greater. And bold words, people, don't hate me for this. The reveal at the end, when you realise what they basically were, which is they were in Longleat Safari Park. That reference means nothing to anyone apart from me and Burhan. At the end was, I really, really enjoyed the reveal that basically just said, by the way, everything you just watched, here's where it took place. Have fun with that. And I loved it. I really, really, I'm not saying it's a perfect movie. I'm just saying I really, really enjoyed this movie. I like old school movies set in that specific time. And I just thought I thought he got his twist back properly, if that makes sense, at the end. Which was, by the way, everything you just seen, check this out, people. Turns out it's here. Oh, look, airplane. Have fun with that. And I really, really enjoyed this movie. I think it really annoys me when people slag it off. And Burhan, watch this fucking movie again and give it another shot. Give it a first shot. Because it really annoys me when people slate this movie, because it's a very solid piece of cinematic entertainment, and I love it. There you go. Sorry, I was babbling, but I love this. By the way,
I will point that out. I just have no interest in watching it. There's certain films that I would never give a chance to.
Great, Burhan. It's great.
Dave, let Burhan decide if he wants to watch the movie or not. You've already pitched it.
He has no choice in this, Miguel. He has no choice in this. Burhan watched the fucking movie. We won't be friends anymore.
Don't be the internet, Dave. Don't be the internet. Okay.
That was a bad joke. I apologize.
I do want to bring up before we move on to the next film the plagiarism accusations, and actually specifically I want to bring them up because I've actually read the book they're talking about. Supposedly it was a plagiarism issue with the book Running Out of Time by Margaret Peterson Haddix. I've actually read this book. I read it in 5th grade, I believe. So
I didn't know there were any accusations. I did,
Yeah.
Before you talk about the book, go into that. Like, I didn't know there were accusations of plagiarism in.
Yeah, the actual author, Margaret Peterson Haddix, actually sued Shyamalan for plagiarizing her book. Running Out of Time is a story about a young girl who thinks she's growing up in 1803, and it turns out it's actually an experiment similar to in the film, where it's actually 1996. The movie's it deals more with the cover-up aspect of it and the whole background behind it. The twist is not the ending. It's the catalyst for the series of events in the book. So this writer ended up suing Shyamalan, and I believe they settled out of court, but there was a whole hoopla about that. But I wanted to bring it up because I've actually read the book. The book's not bad. I think that's probably why the ending didn't really hit with me, because I just sat there and I'm like, wait a minute, I've seen this before, but where have I seen it? But it was so many years removed from when I had seen read that book, that it wasn't until later down the line where I was like, oh yeah, that book, yeah, I've read that. So it's just it really was funny that and I don't read that many books, so whenever a book that I have read is the topic of some type of controversy, I kind of like, yeah, I've read that book. I'm like Captain America in the Avengers. It's like, I know where that's from. So that's something that I wanted to bring up. But yeah, this is what kind of started Disney's love-hate relationship, or it was what made their relationship rocky at this point. This was another drop-off. It was $60 million budget, $256 million at the box office. Yeah, it was another drop-off.
How I mean, I like this movie, but how did that cost $60 million? It was filmed, like, you could knock those, if you're the BBC, you could knock those sets up in 5 minutes for the cost of £5. Like,
the cost goes up. I mean, there's all kinds of things, just in Hollywood, man, actors, points, union labor costs, just things really get out of hand quickly.
You give me a contract to build your sets. Thank you for giving me the contract, but now I'm going to automatically overinflate your price by 25%.
Mm-hmm.
It's not
keep in mind,
you've got like executives and producers as well. Why Shyamalan taking lunch would probably cost $100,000.
Probably.
Yeah, exactly.
But when you consider the cast, too, I mean, you had Joaquin Phoenix, Adrian Brody, William Hurt, Sigourney Weaver. I mean, it was a pretty stacked cast also. Sure. I wouldn't be surprised if Sigourney probably asked for a lot. But this was kind of started the kind of uneasiness between Disney and Shyamalan. And pretty much the breaking point of that relationship would be our next film, which is 2006's Lady in the Water. I want to talk about the controversies behind it because...
you said that name aloud. That's why I have roids right now.
Calm down, Dave. Calm down. We'll get to you in a bit. But yeah, I want to talk about the controversies because there's a lot of controversy behind this. One of the biggest ones being Disney pretty much screwing Shyamalan out with the advertising. This movie was advertised heavily as a horror film. It was like from the mind of horror expert M Knight Shaymalan, from the creator of The Sixth Sense and Signs, the scariest movie in the world, Lady in the Water. It's not. It's not a scary movie. It's actually, I would say it's probably more of a throwback to a more adult, like Spielberg movie than Signs.
What was its rating?
It was, I believe it was PG-13. I don't think he did an R movie until The Happening. I believe that was actually one of the big selling points for that. But
was that their lack of understanding on that as well? Because I remember they were saying about the conflict between him and them. He wanted to tell a story that he told his daughter, like a kind of a kid's story, and they were like, "No, it's a horror film."
That's what I heard.
Yeah, it's a horror film.
Yeah, it was a bedtime story that he wrote for his children, and actually at the very end of the film, after the credits, it says it's something along the lines of, "I'll tell you this story one more time and then go to sleep." And he said time and time again before, like when Disney was really pushing this as a scary film and a horror film, and the trailers were. I did a video on where I was talking about what's wrong with movie trailers, and this was one of the things where I said, trailers that lie to the audience. It's like, okay, well,
sorry, I don't interrupt you, but I was just going to say I did watch something the other day on YouTube, which is one of those I forget the channel, great channel, big channel, obviously, when they talk about 10 things that are wrong with Hollywood, and this was one that popped up in the. Ever felt like you've been lied to in a trailer? And this was in there.
Yeah, because this was probably one of the biggest offenders as far as lying to the audience. They added in the scary music, and the way that they cut it was completely duping the audience. So it's like, okay, let's say that now you manage, because the big thing the trailer is supposed to do is to get people into the theater. Okay, but you got them into the theater under false pretenses. They're in there expecting a horror film, and they get not a kids movie, but sort of a bedtime story. And of course, everyone's going to come out and say that this movie sucked because it wasn't the movie that they wanted to see. And I think that is a large part of why this movie gets so much flack, is because they got a bait and switch. They were expecting one thing, and then they were delivered another. And M Knight, I know, was really upset about this, but of course, his side rarely came out, and he kind of just got blamed for the movie being bad when he had nothing to do with the marketing of it.
He also, people like to throw this under the bus in terms of being a quote-unquote vanity project because of the fact that Shyamalan does play himself in the movie. Not just that he plays himself, but he also plays a big role in the movie. Okay, I can understand why people might be annoyed at that, because Shyamalan's not really an actor of sorts, and to make himself that much of a focal point, especially considering the character he plays is a writer whose, quote-unquote, writings will change the world, I can see how people would kind of sense that.
He's essentially playing himself.
Yeah, he's kind of playing himself in a role. But
basically,
you know what?
It gives that whole arrogance thing. After they did that whole the next Spielberg, I think it kind of got to his head a little bit. He was just like, I can do anything I want. I'm multi-talented. It doesn't take away from what he accomplished behind the camera. I just wish he stayed behind the camra.
Same here.
I felt insulted as an actor. As someone who's kind of trained in this thing, watching someone who's just say he's no Kevin Smith. And Kevin Smith's not that great in my opinion. Sorry, guys.
He's more of a character actor, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
But yeah, also we have to bring up the fact that the one character that dies in the movie is a snobby film critic, which is kind of similar to what Emmerich and Roland Emmerich did with Godzilla when he had the Siskel and Ebert knockoffs as the mayor and his lackey. A lot of people gave Shyamalan flack for that. Whatever, it was an inconsequential character that was just there for cheap laughs. I mean, I didn't really laugh too much at his character, but it is what it is. It didn't hurt the movie. I do want to say one thing about it that I think did bug me about the film. By the way, let me just say spoilers. I did like this film a lot more than I thought, but in Signs, this was a little bit less prevalent, but really came ahead in Lady in the Water, which is Shyamalan seems to think that making characters awkward and giving them weird quirks means... Is everybody still there, by the way?
I'm still here.
Okay, I think we might have just lost Dave. Dave lives in a backwoods area in Britain, so he kind of has bad internet. I just wanted to make sure. Yeah, he just dumped out on us. We'll bring him back in a second. But going back to what I was saying about Shyamalan, he tends to think that giving characters odd quirks is character development of sorts, because he kind of did that in Signs with the little girl having problems with water and whatnot, and obviously the baseball thing, although those fit more into the story and were excusable about it. Initially, I was turned off by this movie because of the weird quirks that he gave all of his characters seemed unnecessary. I mean, there's that character in the movie that half his body is, huge and half of it isn't, which I didn't see the point in. There was the quirks in there bugged me, even though they did some of them a bit. did factor in at the end, but I can see how that might be a turnoff for people. It's kind of fake character development, in my opinion. But I will say this about the movie. I went into this looking to hate it. I was like, oh, I got to watch this movie because we're doing a retrospective, and it wouldn't be fair if I didn't see Lady in the Water because I know people are going to want to talk to me about it. I actually like this movie. I really did. I'm one of these people who likes a good plot, and I thought the plot of the movie really worked. I know Burhan is more of a character-driven person, and that's why he didn't like the movie, and we'll get to him in a second. I liked it. I'm okay with coincidences if it feels like you're creating a universe of your own, which Shyamalan tends to do. He tends to create a universe where coincidences are fine. I was fine with the coincidences in Signs because he kind of crafted his own universe in that regard, and I was fine with the coincidences in Lady in the Water. I thought, yeah, even though some of the quirks like Giamatti's stutter, I think Giamatti is so good in this movie. His moments really do work for me. I think the movie has great elements to it. I think there are some really solid character moments. There is some goofiness there, some lines that people would say that nobody would say in real life. But all in all, I thought it was a very well put together movie. And I think honestly, had this been the follow up to Signs, it probably would have done better because it kind of reminds me more of Signs than The Village did. The Village was a complete drop off from what Signs was. This, I think, could have really been a double feature of sorts. What did you think of Lady in the Water, Cecil?
I loved it. I had heard at the time when it first came out in theaters, I wasn't able to see it because I was like really busy, and I had a couple of friends of mine that saw it. And they, oh my God, worst movie ever! Don't waste your time. This movie absolutely sucks. And I finally was able to catch it when it came on DVD, and I was like, oh, you know what? I'm like, I enjoyed his stuff before, and I've had. With The Village, I went in not really, expecting much and ended up enjoying it. So I'm like, let me watch Lady in the Water and see how it goes. And I really liked it. I loved the aesthetics of it. I thought the story was cool. Like I said, I knew the whole bedtime story angle, like it was more of a fable. And so I didn't have any notion that it was going to be a horror movie. And I looked at it as more of a fable because fables are kind of goofy. There are little weird isms in there that maybe wouldn't be in reality. So I was kind of looking at it as that. And I liked it. I thought that the jab with the film director getting eviscerated, you know what? I'm sure that was very cathartic. It was like, you know what? He had gotten raked over the coals a couple times. Here's a way for him to fire back. And I think that it's funny that if you look at it from this perspective, okay, how many horrible things were said about M Knight? When his career was kind of when they were a little iffy. Oh, this guy sucks. People are making fun of his last name. His career is done. People were calling Lady in the Water dead in the water, that kind of thing. So it's like, well, here's an opportunity. I'm going to throw a little jab back. So he throws a jab back. He kills the film critic in the movie, and then everybody, oh, how could he do this? And it's like, you self-important idiots. Let the guy throw a jab back at you. You can't take it, So I just think that was very petty. But as far as the movie, I really liked it. I thought the ending was just beautiful with the way that it was shot, where the camera was going like above and below the water. And just it's really good. And this is one probably out of all of his that absolutely is unfairly just blasted.
Yeah, it in no way deserves a lot of the hate that it gets. I think the best way I could say it is so much better than word of mouth gives it. Like I said, I think it would have been a great follow-up to Signs instead of The Village, but that's just me. Burhan, I know you said you're not a big fan of Lady in the Water. What did you think of it?
You hit the nail on the head on the fact that I'm a character-driven actor. I'm the type of guy who likes to basically have all the elements in place in the movie. If a movie's hilariously bad, like The Room, for instance, because you're going in there expecting it to be shit.
I like that movie.
Yeah, and it's
hi, Mark.
Yeah, and it has quotable lines and stuff. This movie, in a sense, I think the issues I had going in there is because I saw how badly marketed this movie was. Disney didn't understand it; they didn't care about it. You know, it was more of the fact that they just basically went in. Ron Howard's daughter was in this movie as well. Paul Giamatti is one of my favourites in terms of, like, he's a very sincerely credible actor in a sense. He was on his own kind of rise to prominence as well at the same time. The thing that bugged me the most about this movie was how bland the characters were. And I know you said that everyone needed their quirks. They just seemed so bland. And I just sat there and I thought, it's so badly written. And Shyamalan's character, I felt that he paid more attention on himself than he did with anyone else. And this is the thing where I have a rule when it comes to directing or acting or even writing in a movie. Myself, I will never do a project that's considered a vanity project. I don't like doing those. I feel that if you do a vanity project, something's got to be sacrificed. If you're gonna basically acting in like your own project, you can't direct it because you're not gonna know how to frame the shots up or how to make everything else in place work. If you're going to basically direct a movie, don't act in it because you're just going to concentrate on trying to get your lines, that you're going to fluff your lines up, and everything else is going to go to shit. I felt he had more attention on himself. He tried to build himself up in this movie too much that he kind of sacrificed the rest of the film. It was very well done. The cinematography was amazing. I felt it was very atmospheric. That's all I could say, but a lot of his movies are. I just felt he sacrificed everything else to make himself look good, and this is where I kind of got really sick and tired of him. You know, I didn't want to watch this movie. At the time, my ex-wife wanted to watch it, and she was like, "Oh, there's this movie called Lady in the Water. Let's watch it." She has this whole thing about Asian people because she's Asian, so she was like, "Hey, you know, he's an Indian director," and I was like, "It's M Night Shaymalan. Please don't watch this movie." She's like, "No, let's watch it. You know, he's Asian. It's fine." I was like, "Okay." Sat down and watched it. She came out of it. She was like, "Yay, this was good, wasn't it?" And I looked like I wanted to kill someone. So I didn't really feel this movie. And again, as I said, beautifully made, just poorly executed. I felt just in terms for me, I couldn't engage. The acting was just bland. I felt Giamatti was wasted. I think even Dallas Bryce Howard, she was wasted in it because she's kind of a credible actress in her own right. You know, she's good. She's not amazing, but she's good, and she could pull off something well better than this. I couldn't. And when he shows up, I've just lost my shit. I was just like, for fuck's sake, how arrogant can you be putting yourself in this movie and writing a character for yourself? You know. And I don't want to say for my earlier Kevin Smith line exactly. He's a character actor. He wouldn't be considered someone that you could see him do Shakespeare or you could see him do multi-layered roles. He's always going to play a character similar to what he plays. Shyamalan has no character. He's a guy that can probably suck the essence out of a scene with one word. He pissed me off to an extent that I would probably... Yeah, I would use this movie as toilet paper based on that very fact. Again, it's probably a lot of people have seen it as a good movie. I just felt that he really took himself too seriously and felt he could do it all and killed his own project because of it.
And see, in the case of the characters and whatnot, I'm willing to give them more leeway because, as I stated before, the whole point of the characters in the movie is they're all archetypes. They're all supposed to be. They all have their purpose in the film. So for the sake of the plot, I was fine with it because I knew that there was a reason for them to be in the film. They weren't just there. They weren't just given screen time because they were there to fill up dead space. They all had their own little purpose. They were, even in the movies, there were archetypes. So I was fine with that. But I get where you're coming from, and yeah, it does seem annoying that they could have put anybody else in that writer's role, and instead Shyamalan decided to play himself. It is unfortunate. Dave, you've been back. We finally got you back. What did you think of Lady in the Water?
I really have to quickly say, BT, I thought you fixed this shit yesterday. Never mind. Sorry. I'm with Byrne on this one. If people like it, great, because taste is subjective. Apparently my trolls don't understand that, but I just found it very underwhelming. I just found like all the actors, I don't know, were just kind of, it's on their day off. They were just like, this is gonna fucking happen and shit. And I just, the story was great, but and mismarketed by Disney or whatever. I just found this movie to be just I don't know. It bored me. Sorry you like this movie, people, but it bored the tits off me.
I could see that. I mean, you can't account for taste, so I'm perfectly fine with that. I mean, if it just bored you, then fair enough. I mean, Burhan.
No, I understand where it was coming from. And I guess this is my taste, but it didn't, wrap me in its envelope of goodness. I just remember thinking when I watched this, and I watched this in the cinema, thinking, oh, I might go and take a piss now because I'm bored.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, if it's just you found it boring, you can't account for that. I went into this wanting to. I'm
not chastising
Dave.
anyone who likes this movie. By the way, you know that.
I know that. I'm just trying to move on because we have like 3 other films we have to do, and we're about 20 minutes left, give or take. So let's move on to the next film because this is the one that's become. I want to say it's probably his most notorious film, but considering the films after this, this is one of the first, we'll say. And that is 2008's The Happening, a movie that I was ready to jump on the bandwagon and completely dump on, but in all fairness, I haven't fully sat down and actually seen the movie, and I don't want to go based off of other people's reviews or the clips that I have seen, because a lot of the stuff is there to show off the actual issues. And given that I just saw Lady in the Water and really liked it, I'm not going to dump on this film and say that it's the worst ever as much as other people have. I will say elements that I've seen from the clips I've seen that bug me about the film. Shyamalan tends to get certain types of actors. A director knows what type of acting he wants to get out of an actor. Directors are like sculptors, and the actors are like clay. I don't know what M Knight Shaymalan was going for with Mark Wahlberg's character based on the clips I've seen. Either Shyamalan really sat in the back and really didn't mold Wahlberg into that role, and Mark Wahlberg's one of those actors, when you've got the right director behind him, he can really give you the performance that he wants, whether it's Michael Bay in Pain and Gain, whether it's Scorsese in The Departed, whether it's Seth MacFarlane in Ted. He can really play a character that you want him to play well, but you have to coach him. Either Shyamalan didn't coach Wahlberg and what we got was what we got because of Wahlberg, or that was the performance that he wanted, and I'm a little disappointed in him because it's hard for me to take the movie seriously when you have performances this goofy. And it goes back to back to what I said about the writing. Shyamalan tries to write character development, and his character development seems to be awkward dialogue. It's like he making the characters awkward makes them a little bit more relatable, and that's kind of not the way you do it. You want to make them more realistic, yes, and a lot of times when you hear stuff in movies, it doesn't sound like stuff people would say in real life, but you don't want to go too far. There's a lot of what I've seen in this movie that just rubs me the wrong way unnecessarily. I hope that once I actually do see the movie in totality, it works better. I do like a lot of the key scenes, a lot of the imagery. There's that famous scene of people jumping off the balcony. There's that really interesting scene I saw with the what I call the handgun conga line, which is the group of people one by one shooting themselves in the head. I thought that scene was filmed very well. I thought the scene with the lawnmower running over John Leguizamo was really chilling. There's a lot of good imagery in this film. It goes back to what I said. Shyamalan's a great cinematographer.
I haven't seen this movie, but you just made it sound like the most dark movie I ever need to watch in my life.
Well, it was marketed as Shyamalan's first R-rated film, and he does take advantage of the R rating. I'll give him that. But to me, there's a lot of elements here that, with a much better director, and maybe just a different person there to coach the actors and deliver this dialogue, it probably could have worked. I'm worried watching it though, because like I said, from what I've seen, there's a lot of unnecessary problems with it. Cecil, you dedicated a whole episode of Good Bad Flicks specifically to The Happening and defending it. So I'll let you take over the floor. Why do you love The Happening?
Well, the funny thing with that episode is I did it too early. Like, I did that, like 4 years ago. And I was still kind of figuring things out back then. And I don't think I really conveyed my point as well as I could now. And that's one of the episodes, or one of the movies that I really would like to revisit, because at the time I still I was kind of focusing on making like some humor as well as like kind of pointing out what was good about the movie, and it kind of confused some people. And I also made the mistake of calling. I was talking about M. Night's movies in general, and I made the mistake of saying that Avatar: The Last Airbender was a manga. It was just kind of like a throwaway line, and oh my god, I've been getting hate mail for 4 years because of that. So,
don't get your words wrong on that, because the fan base will go crazy.
Oh my god, I even annotated on the actual video. I made a mistake. You know, you should go in and I'm like, oh god, I don't need this. So, but anyway, the thing with The Happening that a lot of people don't know is that M. Night deliberately filmed it to be like those old 50s paranoia films, films like them and The Day the Earth Stood Still and Earth versus the Flying Saucers. So the acting in that, where it is very stilted, it's very deliberate. Because if you go back and you watch those old movies, that is exactly how the people were acting. They were doing very well. What is that? You know, like, and he kind of was doing that as like an homage and a throwback to that, with some more current sensibilities, meaning the really edgy violence that he pushed through. I mean, there was unfortunately the studio kind of cut it out, but there was a scene where the one kid gets shot in the face. And they show, you know, they filmed it and they were going to put it in the movie. And then the studio was like, no, we need to dial that back. So they kind of took it and you know, cut it out. You know, it still happens, but they cut it so that you don't really see it as you did before. But there were like the scene, like you were saying with the scene where John Leguizamo drives the Jeep into the tree. There's the kid that shoves the violin thing down his throat. There's the guy that gets mauled by the lion or tiger. I don't remember which, but there was a lot of violence in it. So this was his first R-rated movie. So he really wanted to kind of take advantage of that and did do a lot of stuff that was very unlike him. And then at the same time incorporating the elements of the old 50s paranoia films. And I think that people were already looking at reasons for him to, or reasons to hate him. And whereas somebody like Tarantino will go and do something like Grindhouse, and all right, well, I'm going to mimic the aesthetic of the old Grindhouse movies, and he did something that was different like that, and then people were praising it. Now, granted, they didn't go see it in the theater at the time, but they still praised the movie. Whereas this, he's like, I'm going for the look of these kind of films, and people were already looking to just lambast him, and then so they just completely ignored that. Just bad acting, bad delivery, bad everything. Another M Night Shaymalan piece of garbage, and that was kind of the thing. So I understand why people don't like it, because it definitely is not for everybody. But I think that it's a cool movie. I think that it's a neat experiment, and I think that. Directors need to take chances and do weird stuff like this every once in a while. Otherwise, they just start cranking out the same thing over and over again.
It's funny you mentioned that he was trying to go for that 1950s aesthetic, but with the sensibilities of a much more violent movie. I think that was the reason why it turned so many people off, is because, you know, our generation today looks at those 1950s films in kind of a tongue-in-cheek sense. You know, he was trying to do it serious. And I think that's what threw people off, because I can see what he was going for dialogue-wise with that 1950s style. But, you know, with my generation would laugh at that. And then you side it with these scenes of horrific violence. It's such a tonal shift. And I like a tonal shift, but that one was a little bit much. I could see how it went over people's heads. They don't know whether to laugh at the film or be horrified by it. It's two completely different mindsets that confuse people. And that's why you get a lot of the hate. Honestly, I've always thought about this for Shyamalan, and it's a bit of a tangent, but we'll get back onto it in a bit. We'll get you guys' thoughts. But I want to get an idea from Cecil. A lot of people talk about, you know, what can Shyamalan do to reinvent his career and stuff? You know, what can he do to bounce back? And The Happening, to me, really feels like an homage in sorts to that style, that 1950s Twilight Zone type stuff, combined with the sensibilities and the storytelling that Shyamalan does. I think Shyamalan, a guy like him, would really flourish doing anthology TV work, honestly. And I think The Happening really proves to me, like, okay, maybe as a 90-minute film, it was a little bit much. As like a 22-minute or even like a 40 or 50-minute anthology episode, I think a movie like this could have really worked. And it makes me think, do you think Shyamalan, that's an area that Shyamalan will really flourish in, and kind of in the same way that, Harlan Ellison did for The Twilight Zone, what Zemeckis did for Tales from the Crypt? Do you think that could be an avenue that Shyamalan could take down? Do you think that would work for him?
I think it would be an interesting way to go. He was kind of going in that direction in a different way with what was it, the Night Chronicles, where he was writing the movie, but then was giving it off to a different director and basically saying, okay, here, I'm going to produce it, but I'm going to be relatively hands off. You can kind of take it, as you want. And that was supposed to be, God, he had a 5-picture deal on that. And then Devil came out, and much like how, in a similar vein, much like how Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles came out, and everybody was like, oh my God, Michael Bay did a Turtles movie. And it's like, no, he just produced it. Same thing with Devil. Although the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was kind of iffy. But I thought The Devil was a cool movie, and people went in immediately just lambasting it. Oh God, another M Night movie, a piece of crap. Oh, he directed another piece, pile of garbage. And it's like, he really didn't have very much to do with this movie at all, aside from fronting the movie and writing, fronting the money and writing it. And it got lambasted. But I think that him doing a bunch of TV shorts, or maybe, what would probably be cool? I think instead of him doing like a TV series, maybe him doing a movie anthology, sort of like a Creep Show or something like that. I think that would kind of be a good way to get interest back. Maybe take something where there's like 4 different directors and doing an anthology, and he's one of them. And so it's like he has his story and then somebody else has their story, and kind of do it that way. I think that would probably be pretty interesting. I'd like to see something like that done. We don't get very many anthologies anymore, and when they do, they get buried like Trick or Treat.
Well, technically, American Horror Stories calls itself an anthology series, but that's more just the same actors doing different stories every season. But yeah, you mentioned Devil. I'm not going to mention it too much because Devil wasn't directed by him, and we're going to stick with just directorial efforts. But yeah, Devil to me felt very much like a Twilight Zone movie. Like, that could have easily have been an episode of The Twilight Zone or Outer Limits or something, that whole plot line. So to me, it feels like a guy like him has a knack for very small, condensed story elements with twists and turns. And yeah, I think a Creep Show or something like that would probably be in his best interest. It might be a great place for him to go if, directing big budget films doesn't work. But enough of that tangent. Burhan, what was your thoughts on The Happening?
I didn't watch this. I stayed clear of it. Many reasons. But I do agree with what Cecil's saying. I think M. Night would do well in kind of like, do you remember the B-movie horror movies? Not the big budget type horror movies, the B-movie style, like the way that the Evil Dead series was, the Freddy movies, Nightmare on Elm Street, the Jason movies as well, the Friday the 13th
Drive-in
movies.
pictures almost.
Yeah, pretty much those. I think he could reinvent himself by doing something similar to that. There's still a market for them on the independents. I think the independents, though, a lot of them aren't doing very well. They're doing like zombie flicks, most of them, which is kind of killing the genre out in terms of feature films. I think he could do something like that in order to kind of rejuvenate his career. The Happening I didn't watch. Again, I soured on him by the end of this, and I didn't pick him up until Avatar, and I'm so fucking pissed off that I even watched that.
We'll get to that.
Yeah, I ignored it. I slept through this one, so I can't really tell you much about it. I heard all the people going on about like how shit this movie was. I just paid no mind to it. I was just like, I'm just gonna stay clear of it, because the way I always see it, if a director starts disappointing me a lot, I just ignore it. And when I saw the trailers as well, Wahlberg just looked it was like the worst performance I've ever seen him in, and he's gone on record saying that he hated this movie. He thought he didn't know what he was doing, and he was like he wasn't really given much to kind of work with, and he was told
I wanted to go back to Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch.
yeah, he was told to kind of downplay his role, and he did, and when he came out of it, he felt unsatisfied.
All right, fair enough. Dave, what was your thoughts on The Happening?
I'll be completely and brutally honest. I haven't seen it. Completely slipped under the radar, but having listened to not Burhan, I love you Burhan and your Beer's Epic, you guys talking about this, which is I didn't know he did an R-rated movie, so I immediately put it on my list of movies to watch.
Yeah, go into it with an open mind, though. I mean, like I said, Cecil said it was basically kind of a violent throwback to the 1950s paranoia film. So
yeah, but I love that when Cecil, explain that. Like, I love the old school 50 movies, so I'm kind of like, am I going to get like old school Hammer House of horror movies and shit when I watch this?
I think if you kind of go into it, if you like that kind of movie, and you go into it knowing that that's what it's trying to do, I think you'll really dig it. And I do find it funny that Mark Wahlberg, who I do like, but I think it's funny that he'll bash this one because this is the movie that kind of everybody else makes fun of, but he's not going to say that The Big Hit was like a piece of garbage. I
gotta watch. I want to watch that movie because I've seen
contradictive twats.
You know what? I've tried watching that movie. Part of me kind of wants to try it again because it was produced by John Woo, and you can tell with a lot of the fight sequences. So I might have to give that another viewing. But yeah, I've seen bits of.
Can I just quietly put my hand up in the background and say I kind of like that movie? I'm not saying it's brilliant, but
that's fine. That's the biggest thing that I always try to convey with my show is that like. Just because you like something or dislike something doesn't mean that you're right or wrong or that everybody else is wrong or whatever. Even like if I say that I like something and you disagree, fine. Like I get people all the time that are like, "Oh, I hate to disagree with you," and I'm like, "That's okay. That's your opinion. If you don't like something, that's cool." I'm sure that there's. Yeah, I mean, dude, I like Teenage Caveman, and I have people that hate me because I like that movie, and I'm not saying that it's a good movie. It's a terrible movie.
Is that the one?
But for some reason,
is that the one that over here? It's called Encino Man.
No. That's a comedy. No, Teenage Caveman is in a post-apocalyptic future. These rebellious teenagers find this group, find these two people that they're immortal, and if they have sex with you and you're not strong enough to withstand their immortalness, you explode.
Snoo.
Yeah. If you have snoo. If you can't handle the
already
snoo.
Sold me on the movie, mate. I'm not gonna lie. You just sold me on the movie. You should be in the fucking trailer.
Just at the end,
it's done.
Teenage Caveman. You can't handle the snoo.
So there's this movie that if you're not strong enough with your wood, that you explode. I'm totally watching that shit.
Well, to give you an idea too, it's directed by Larry Clark, who did Kids. So it's
I hate that movie. Sorry.
Yeah, so that's it's very like the actors are they're not underage, but they're like younger, and his shots really do linger on them. And there's this one scene where they're sitting around and they're doing like all kinds of drugs, and they're like taking each other's clothes off, and it is really just weird. But
it's really uncomfortable, is what you're saying, because you're like, dude, are you enjoying this a little bit too much?
Yeah. Because you can only imagine how much film, it's like, all right, this is just what ended up in the movie. How long did he film these scenes for? So it's a very unusual film.
We don't want to see the director's cut.
Yeah. No. Actually, the director's cut's probably not. It's probably like Ken Park, where it's not allowed to be seen in like the U.S.
Oh boy, I still haven't.
Can I just quickly take a random tangent and go back to what Burhan said when he said it was called Encino Man? This is one thing that really itched my balls was because I was in the States at the time, and I watched Encino Man, and right, it's a shit movie. But apparently, in this country, in England, we're so stupid that we wouldn't, even though we invented archaeology, we wouldn't understand what the word Encino meant. So in this country, Cecil, Miguel, do you know what that movie was called?
What's it called?
California Man. Because everyone in England is stupid.
Oh, that's unfortunate. But yeah, I was going to make a reference to how I can't even watch reviews of Ken Park. Brows Held High, which is Owen Citizen on Channel Awesome, did a review, and I cannot force myself to watch that. I've read the synopsis of the movie. It's disturbing. But
can I quickly come back to something Cecil said really quickly, which is, I did a video about this once, and I got so much hatred over it. It's unbelievable. And sorry, Burhan and Miguel, I'm not self-plugging. Which is, I did a video called once, Taste is Subjective. And, you don't like what I watch, what I play, what I read, the action figures I collect. Get over it. And I got so much hatred over that, saying, like, you're wrong, I'm going to tell you why you're wrong. And then I'm going to insult your mother and possibly your father and pretend that I want to rape you. And it's like, wow, didn't realize I was entitled to an opinion when I'm always respectful in my videos. But yeah, no, I totally get what you're saying about
Dave,
that one.
They want to give you snoo.
People go batshit crazy over anything, which is, how dare you? I did a video 2 weeks ago on Pro Evolution Soccer on the Wii, and I dared, my fault, I entirely know this, I dared to mention that Liverpool are my favourite football team, and I think Gerrard is one of the greatest players in the world. And I got so much hatred on that. And
that's your problem, is you talk sports on the internet. You may as well talk politics while you're at it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I got a death threat over that, by the way.
Well, remember the line I told you: love your haters; they're your biggest fans.
I did. I before I blocked him, I sent him a message back saying, like, if you want to fight me, good luck, mate. You're 3,000 miles away over the Atlantic, so seriously, you're not going to fight me. Piss off. By the way, your mother's great.
All right, let's get on to the big one, because I remember at this point, Shyamalan's hired gun. He is a gun for hire. And I remember when they first announced that he would be taking over this project, and I actually had a lot of high hopes. I was like, all right, finally. He's got a franchise behind him. It's already pre-made. He doesn't have to put his quirkiness into it. All he has to do is just adapt the source material.
We're talking Avatar.
We're not talking Avatar. We are talking The Last Airbender, which was the first problem with this movie. James Cameron had the rights to Avatar, the name, for film rights, so they had to end up calling it The Last Airbender, which is a strike against the film in its own right. Now, let me say this. I had a lot of high hopes for Last Airbender. I was like, yes, Shyamalan can't screw this up. He's a good director. It's not a script he's technically writing. He's adapting the source material. This is a foolproof plan. And I'll say this about it. And I actually defended this film early on when I first saw it. I got dragged to see it with some cousins of mine who were fans of the series. They were little. They were little kids, and they were fans of the series. They were my cousins, so I went to go see the movie with them. And I'll say this. When you don't know anything about the source material, it's just a mediocre film. It's just mediocre. The special effects are mediocre. The acting, it's kid acting, so you shouldn't really expect too much.
God,
it's not like
it's not even kid acting. This is beyond. This is.
It's
like,
terrible.
It's like
it's
watching
bad
models read lines.
I think the nostalgia critic said it best when he said everybody acts like a young Anakin Skywalker. And I'm not talking about and I'm not talking about the little kid version from Phantom Menace. I'm talking about Hayden Christensen.
Yeah.
But like I said,
the greatest quote in the world.
Yeah, if you don't know the backstory for The Last Airbender, or if you've never seen the series, you might not hate it as much as people do. Otherwise, like I said, it's a mediocre film. It's just mediocre all around. When you do know about the characters in the film and the stuff that didn't make it into the movie, and the writing in the series, and just the character motivations and whatnot, that's where the movie really falls apart for me.
And the racial undertones as well, Miguel. I remember the interviews he did about this, but I'll talk about it when I get to my turn.
Yeah, I'll get to you in a bit. once you realize what he got just wrong, not even that he just did it poorly, it's just wrong. I'm going to say this. Last Airbender is not a terrible film. I'm going to say it's one of the worst adaptations I've ever seen. It just gets so much of the core material wrong. And I know people can take liberties, and some liberties are worth taking. You know, I can point to several movies that changed the motivations and characters of the ones from the book or from the TV series, and it worked. This didn't. It had so much potential to it, and I think that's the saddest point, is because Nickelodeon will probably never go back to it. I mean, if we're lucky, we'll see a Legend of Korra movie made. I doubt it, though, at this point, because this pretty much killed any hope of the rest of the series being made, and that's really sad to me. Cecil, what was your thoughts on Last Airbender?
I knew absolutely nothing about The Last Airbender. So much so, like I said earlier, I made the mistake of calling it a manga because I thought that's what it was. And I didn't know it was an American produced thing. And so I really didn't have much interest in it. And I saw it on DVD like well after it had come out. And I was like, you know, some of the effects I thought were neat. But I definitely felt like it was, at the time, the weakest film that he had made, because it just felt like it could have been a movie that anybody could have made. Like if there was somebody else's name, like the thing that always got me up to this point with M Night movies was that you would watch it and there were tells where you could be like, oh, okay, this is an M Night movie. Whereas like Spielberg and Coppola, and there are certain directors that have a style that you notice that kind of becomes their own, and this just kind of looked like it could have been anybody's. So I didn't hate it. I just thought it was like, you know. But I had no. I think we did. I did an episode of Radiodrome about it, and people were like, you know, no, you're supposed to hate this movie, and I'm like, why? Like, I don't feel passionately enough about the source material to hate it, because I don't know anything about it. I don't know what they apparently got wrong, which evidently was everything. So I just thought it was mediocre at best, and I really have no interest in ever seeing it again. So
Yeah, you're doing yourself a favor in that regard. Burhan, go.
Okay, I'm going to go on a bit of a tangent about this. I'm a big fan of the Avatar Last Airbender series. I watched it. I loved it. Great arc by arc fucking story. When it was announced that they were doing this and they announced M Night, I was just like, God, please, please, please. And he's like, I'm a big fan of series. Like, okay, he knows. He knows. And he's like, it's a great
He lied, he
tale.
took a paycheck.
Yeah, it was basically a story. There's a story for the Avatar Last Airbender. Came up with two guys sitting in an elevator, basically thinking up this whole concept and pitching it to Nickelodeon. Nickelodeon took it on, took the bait. Series did so well that they basically went and turned into a secondary series called Legend of Korra after that, you know, after the fact, which kind of didn't do very well due to Nickelodeon kind of having scheduling conflicts. But with that, I digress. They talked about the film series. This was a franchise. This was a franchise that could not have gone wrong. It had a built-in fan base. You had people gasping to watch it. It had basically origins from martial arts movies. You know, the Earth, the freaking waterbenders. You had the firebenders. It was a great story. First thing that made me worried about this movie is when I saw an interview, I believe it was in Total Film, where M Night said, this movie needs a bit more colour. And no, not colour, it needs to be shot in more colour. It needs more brown people. I am not fucking lying. This is what he said. I sat there and went, wait, aren't the people in this supposed to be Oriental? Why is he going for ethnic? I don't know. And, you know, that kind of bad. I was like, nope, it's going to be fine. Then I went to the cinema to watch this piece of shit. What happened was he rushed book 1, book 2, book 3, all the way to book 6, I believe, and jam-packed it into one movie. These kids were not child actors. They were models with scripts. Their lines were being delivered as fucking wooden as a tree in the back fucking yard.
I will say one thing about one of the actors. The actor that played Zuko in there is actually a professional actor. I believe he would go on to actually play the lead in Slumdog Millionaire.
Well, he actually got this off the lead of Slumdog Millionaire. He is a pretty good actor. He shouldn't have played Zuko because he was the wrong person to play the character. He didn't know the character. No one was familiar with their characters. The characters were poorly written. I don't even understand why he rewrote the script, because the scripts were already there. It boggles my mind when you do a comic or cartoon adaptation and you have a script there. Yes, you may have to adapt it to film, but you don't have to change the fucking context. The characters were so bland, the scenes were so wooden, the cinematography, they had a fucking pebble. A pebble that these people were bending. And I'm like, where are the fucking boulders? These are fucking big. The movements were wrong. The characters were wrong. You had no fucking clue what was going on. The journey, the chemistry, there was nothing there. The overtones, the movie seemed so bleak. It looked like he was fucking like painting it with really dark, nasty colours. The browns, the greens. It was... I looked at this movie, and even my ex-wife at the time looked at it and went, what the fuck is this shit? And she watches anything. She watches Keeping Up with the fucking Kardashians, for God's sake. And I'm watching this thing going, oh my fucking God. I walked out of the cinema before the movie even ended, pleading
Good man.
that Nickelodeon revoke the rights. And then he comes out going, like, I remember he did a review afterwards going, I see promise in another movie. I think they'll do it. And Nickelodeon are like, fuck no. Do you know what I mean? This was the worst thing I have ever seen. And I'm even counting that bullshit After Earth. This was the worst M. Night movie I have ever seen in my life. And I literally wanted to hit him afterwards. It's when someone's taken too much creative control, creative reign, lack of knowledge.
There'll be a twist at the end after you hit him.
Lack of knowledge. Yeah, he'll disappear and fade into dust, and then I'll realise it was all a dream. It basically just it was so obnoxious, so arrogantly done that you sat there, and this was basically a stereotypical Hollywood taking something type movie. This is what happens when someone doesn't understand the source material and takes reins to tell their own variation of the story when the story was there. The Avatar Last Bender series finished. I think only like 4 months before this movie came out, and I was just like, what was wrong with you? I literally felt that after this movie he should have disappeared. And I'm surprised people didn't try to kill him. I'm surprised there weren't people being arrested trying to kill this man. It was too much. And this is where I kind of went, fuck Shyamalan. Fuck him. Fuck him with a great big large pole up the anus. And make it hurt. It offended me on
Don't mince your words, Burhan.
Tell us how you really feel.
Yeah, it offended me on so many levels. Being a fan of the cartoon, I was going to say anime series, but it's a cartoon series. Being a fan of the story and being someone who loves storytelling in his movies, this just took it to a whole new level. Oh, just I have more to say, but this is the abridged version.
Yeah, to kind of play an inside thing with Cecil and with Cecil. I think Burhan just pulled a Hadley. I think that was a Hadley level rant there.
Well, he needed to go like, you just don't understand. That's when you go full Hadley.
At the beginning.
Folks, if you've never heard Radiodrome, it's a hoot, and we'll definitely plug that when we get to the end. But Dave, I'm not sure if you're a fan of Avatar: The Last Airbender, but give us your thoughts.
I'm a massive fan of Avatar, and that's the reason I've never watched this movie. All right, I'm not. See, I'm a massive fan of the cartoon series, and obviously they're closely based upon the books, which I'd never read, so I guess that makes me contradict myself in a statement. But I was a massive fan of the Avatar cartoon, so when they announced that he was directing this, my brain just went, oh, fuck off. Sugar tits, fuck off. This is just not going to end well. And now that Burhan has explained exactly everything that's wrong with the movie, I certainly don't need to watch it again. Really, you combine that many books into one fucking movie?
Yeah, that's the one flack. That's the one thing I'll give him flack for is that no one could do that much source material in one film and
Well,
hope
this
to
is
keep.
my point, which is he doesn't need to bend. All right, the studios have got their hands on his back, but which is, it's got such great allegiance from the fans. He doesn't need to bend anyway. Someone will watch an entire 2-hour movie on the first act of the comics and love it. But no, Hollywood said, you must do this.
It wasn't
So
Hollywood. I'll tell you
feel-
straight, because Nickelodeon Studios own the rights. This is Nickelodeon, the same company who produced the series. So having that, and then having this guy shit all over it, they must have sat there and just went, money?
Well,
But do not Nickelodeon get, and I guess I'm being complacent when I say this because I haven't seen it, but do not Nickelodeon get when they created this train wreck of horseshit bollocks that you're in the wrong here, people.
do you want to know Do you want to know the sad thing is, and Dave, you're going to fall out of your chair when you hear this. $150 million budget, made back $320 million. It's the third highest grossing Nickelodeon film behind.
Really?
Yeah, third highest grossing film behind the 2014 TMNT and The Adventures of Tintin.
I
It's the
think
third
I was
highest.
just sick in my mouth. Excuse me while I have to swallow my own vomit. That's disgraceful and disgusting. There's brilliant independent actors out there and directors who would scream and cream their pants at any opportunity, and they threw this shit. And I like Shaymalan, don't get me wrong, they threw this shit at him who has no respect for the source material, and it made money. I'm really upset right now. I'm going to go crying.
At least you can keep solace in one thing. Had it been for any other director, Nickelodeon would have given him a sequel. For $300 million, Nickelodeon would have given any other director, but because of the
budget. I
because
can't
of the
believe the budget. Fuck me.
Yeah, I get that, but because of the fact that there was such a blowback against this film, I doubt we're ever going to see them explore the series
Miguel,
anymore.
even
And
the
not good.
creators- Even the creators were
No,
offended.
good in the sense I don't want to see it in live action. I want to see, I would love to see them take the original animators and story writers who did the original anime based upon the comic book and see not a live action, but
A big screen version.
Yeah, but not fucking live action. Some things should not be made into live action. It's incomprehensible about how you would even adapt these things. But Hollywood comes along and says, like, we can make a movie out of this. Piss off, you can't. It doesn't work in, well, I say real life, but obviously special effects and shit like that. But it doesn't work in the real world in the sense that it's supposed to be animated. And that's its charm, you dickheads.
All right, so let's move on to the last.
Sorry, rants aside.
Yeah, there was a lot of rants. I figured this was going to be probably our most polarizing out of all of them. So I'm glad that we got it out of our system because this is the other more infamous film, and it's the last film that we'll talk about tonight. This is full on. Shyamalan is scrambling at this point. Airbender, from a critical perspective, was a complete bomb. It was a 6%. I don't think it deserves the 6%, but that's just me. So at this point, he basically teams up with Will Smith, who, Will Smith has this concept for a movie. He pitches it to Shyamalan. Shyamalan agrees to direct. And on the surface, I was happy with this. I was like, yes, this is going to be the movie that brings him back. Will Smith is a bankable actor. He's one of those guys that you can put as the head of your movie and it'll make bank. He is a name. He is box office gold. I've never really been disappointed with a Will Smith movie. I'm even one of the few people that like Wild Wild West, okay? For its goofiness, I like it. But we get After Earth, and right off the bat, the biggest problem.
I'm trying really hard not to laugh, by the way, at that statement. Sorry.
What, that I like Wild Wild West? I think that's a fun movie.
Shite.
Cecil, will we ever see a Wild Wild West episode of Good Bad Flicks?
Not likely.
Oh, okay.
Cecil, what do you think about Wild Wild West?
I don't really feel like that strongly about it. I don't hate it. It's just like it's goofy, and the thing is, like, I have seriously so many movies that like I need to do that like that one I really don't feel that compelled to do an episode on it. Because the thing is I have no tie to the old TV show, and the movie itself is just kind of like, eh. You know, I don't hate it. It's just kind of, you know, it is what it is. So, like, I might. God, maybe if 20 years from now, if I'm still doing this, maybe I'll do a Wild Wild West episode. I don't know.
The only thing I take from that movie is I really like the South Park piss take of it.
Oh yeah, the Cartman one. But yeah, I figure Shyamalan's directing a movie. He's not writing it. This one I don't believe he wrote. No. So he's doing somebody else's script. He's directing it. I've always said the guy's got an eye for cinematography.
But I bet that burns him because he's always been a complete control freak. So.
Yeah, I think he's distanced himself from this movie because After Earth, we talked extensively about this. Actually, in our first episode, we did an episode on the bombs of 2013 because this was one of many movies that year that just tanked financially, and this one was no exception. This movie's biggest problem to me was it was a bait and switch. The movie was promoted as a Will Smith movie. And spoiler alert, for those of you who haven't seen it, Will Smith only plays maybe I would say a 10% role in this movie. It's really a showcase for his son. And it very much is...
it comes back to what Byrne said, which is Will Smith has just turned into the pimp for his child, right?
Yeah, very much
man.
so.
It ain't easy.
Yeah, and very much so, and that makes me sad because this movie really did no favors for Jaden Smith. If he ever had any sort of inkling for acting, this destroyed him. He was not prepared to be the lead in a big budget, multi-million-dollar movie like this. Otherwise, it feels like a Shyamalan movie. It's got all of his weird little character tropes. It just, to me, it was a lot of just... If it had been Will Smith at the helm of this and he had actually acted in this, it probably wouldn't have been as bad because, like I said, I like Will Smith. But when you've got a lead as unlikable as Jaden Smith, you know, and he's basically having to carry the movie by himself, I could see why this movie flopped. There's not much I could say about this. I'll be honest, I've only seen bits and pieces of it. I've not seen it fully, but the bits I've seen, it has a lot of the weird tropes of Shyamalan movies, like the weird dialogue that he has in it. And like I said, the big thing that hurts it is it's a lead actor. A bad lead can bring a whole movie down, and that's the biggest problem with After Earth. Cecil, what did you think of After Earth?
The thing that gets me about After Earth, I think that it is a beautiful looking film. I think that the work that they put into it, I feel really bad for them because there were artists and designers and people that created these really beautiful sets and these world and these animations, these creatures, and then it all falls on the back of Jaden Smith, who is just an unlikable little prick. I really was irritated because I like Will Smith a lot. The majority of his films, I think, are great, are very entertaining, and even his bad ones, I think that he still at least is good. It's just maybe the movie is bad. It really irritated me with this movie because, like you said, where Will Smith got with M Knight, and being that both of them are from Philadelphia, hey, why haven't we done a movie before? Let's do a movie together. Great. So they got together, and it seemed like it was going to be a good idea, and then it turned into what did the movie had like $250 million budget or something ridiculous. It was this massive budgeted nepotism. It was basically a way for them to do this movie and for him to shoehorn his son into this. There is no... If anybody else had put this movie together, they would not have cast Jaden Smith. They would have cast a kid who could actually act. There's a part in the movie where the one giant bird like rescues him, but in doing so, like it dies, and after like he wakes up and he's like he realizes that that the bird saved him, and he's like, "Hey man, thanks for saving me." And then the bird is like dead, and he goes, "Oh man!" Like it was it was so bad. yeah, like any other like kid could have like emoted, maybe necessarily didn't even have to say anything, just show that, oh, I realize this thing, gave up its life to save me. But no, oh man, and the whole movie, it was Jaden Smith. His acting, it ranged from frowning to furrowing his brow and frowning, like and occasionally talking to Will Smith via intercom to kind of be like, "Hey, remember Will Smith's in this movie that you're watching." But I was really irritated because, again, I thought the directing was good, but the story, I thought the idea was solid, but you had this, you really had to have a strong actor to carry this film, and in no way, shape, or form should Jaden Smith have been at the front of this film. He's a terrible actor, and he was the wrong choice. And anybody else, like the kid from Ender's Game, would have been a better choice. They could have been like, oh well, you gotta. He married a white woman, and he had a half white kid or something who happened to have a British accent. But but I was just like, anybody else thrown in there.
Dare I say this? Good. His only redeeming factor. Sorry.
Yeah. But like it really bothered the hell out of me. And then again, what got me was the movie of course flopped, and people were coming out and they were calling for M. Knight's head, and it just bothered me because it's like, look, this was a film where no, I didn't like it, but I don't really feel that it was M. Knight's fault. I think that it was like, okay, he more or less, it was kind of a package deal. Hey, Will Smith was like, I'll produce this film and we'll do this movie together and it'll be great, but my son has to be the star. And
did Smith say as well that he was armchair directing the movie? Because I remember he said that it wasn't M. Knight's fault, that he was going by Smith's direction. He was doing more than producing it.
Yeah, I think he really meddled with it a lot because being, it's my.
So he ignored the director.
Probably, I could see, it really, because him at the time he was having it, he was not as in demand as he was previously, and this was kind of an attempt to really get, drum up some interest again. And like I said, on paper, it sounded like a great idea. But then of course the film does terrible, and Will Smith skates, his terrible son skates, and M. Night, takes the entire blame for it. And I don't think that that's fair.
No, I agree not. With you. And from what I've heard, there's also a lot of, this was during that weird period where people thought Smith was a Scientologist, and supposedly a lot of that you can see in this movie. Like I said, I haven't seen the movie fully, but do you get that vibe from this movie?
I guess you could say I didn't like it on par with how I didn't like Battlefield Earth, if you want to pull the Scientology card.
There was a whiff of Tom Cruise in this movie.
Yeah, he showed up and started jumping up and down on couches. And
it's funny. Somebody brought up a great point. I think it was Spoonie who actually brought it up, where he said if this was really an M. Night movie, it would have made sense for it to have like some type of twist at the end where, okay, maybe they find Will Smith and he's actually dead, and everything that Jaden Smith heard was actually him projecting his father, to kind of push him to continue. That actually, I think, would have salvaged the film slightly. Like, that would have been a neat little ending.
He could have, really resurrected this movie, because I hate it, which is when they find his dead corpse, he could be resurrected and say, in West Philadelphia, born and bred, and sing the fucking Fresh Prince.
No. I'm serious on this. Like, that I think would have redeemed the movie. It kind of would have been like, okay, the going through Jaden and whatnot, having to deal with him in the front, but having a twist ending like that would have, I think, salvaged the film a little bit, slightly. I think the movie still would have had its issues, but I've always thought that, a bad movie could be saved with a good ending, and an ending like that probably could have maybe helped the film out instead of just ending the way it did.
No, you're right. You're totally right. I own many bad movies on DVD, but this is the only movie that I literally took straight back to the store and lied to get a refund on because it's shit.
Go ahead, Dave. We'll throw it over to Burhan in a bit, but go ahead. Speak your piece, buddy.
It's got this massive amount of, if this makes sense, pretense. It builds itself up as this amazing movie in this sci-fi event you must watch. And then you watch it and you just go like, I don't care about the characters. I can't invest upon any of you. And this is really bland. And, oh, nice CG effects there. That's brilliant. But just the whole thing for me was like watching fucking Sunday. And I'm sorry you're religious when I say this. Anyone. Like watching a fucking church service on a Sunday. It was just so bland and boring. It's like, everything about it ticked the boxes. Like, oh, look at us, we got a massive budget and great. But there was, I can't put my finger on it. It was, I'll tell you what, I've had shits that are more interesting than this fucking movie. And it really annoyed me because, well, possibly I approached this movie in the wrong way because on one of the previous Untitled movie shows when we talk about how Will Smith pimps his kids, I just watched this movie and just went, all right, there's 2 hours of my life I'm never getting back. Great. And I did because I took it back to the store and lied and said it was scratched and got my money back. But like, it's such an awful, pointless, boring movie. It reeks of and Will Smith in this, which it reeks of someone who comes up with this, I've got this fan project that, or this personal project I should make that's going to be brilliant and everyone's going to love it and I'm going to beg studios to make it, and when they do they'll love it. And it comes back to what Cecil said, which is it does actually reek of Battlefield Earth. It's in the sense that it's just like, did no one like look at this and just say on paper, are you fucking stupid? Like, it's just not going to work. Although I can take one positive out of Battlefield Earth, by the way, which is a tangent. When I lived in Canada, I met one of the blokes who worked on Battlefield Earth, and he let me play with all the prop guns. And that 5 seconds of my life was far better than the fucking movie. But
it was probably more satisfying.
Yeah, they were good prop guns, don't get me wrong. But no, this movie is just, it's like...
Dave?
Bland.
All right. Burhan, finish us out. What did you think of After Earth?
After Earth for me, I will say this, right? I watched the Karate Kid remake with Jaden, and
which I liked.
A friend of mine actually said, he goes, when Jackie Chan is the best actor in an American movie, then you know you got a problem. I'm not saying Jackie Chan is a bad actor. I'm just saying that it doesn't translate over. Now, the thing about Jaden, he's the worst person to kind of have in any vehicle, and I agree with what Cecil said, echo what Dave says. The kid can't act. And this was an M. Night movie. You could see the M. Night Shyamalan-isms in the movie. But the one thing that came out of it as well was Will Smith was armchair directing. He was taking control of what he felt worked in the movie and what didn't. Because of that, I think a lot of it got sacrificed. He wanted to show his son a lot more. The language, the way they talked, sound like they're all backyard Texas, like, twats who are inbred and had sex with their mums.
Everybody had a weird accent in there, and you really couldn't pinpoint it. Like, I think it was a review that I said where it was almost like he was trying to go for some meld of like all different dialects. Like, society had fallen apart, and so.
I get what he was going for, but like you said, Miguel, which is society is falling apart. We're now just a meld of different people and accents and shit like this, and it just did not translate to the screen.
Yeah, he's no Joss Whedon. Joss Whedon did that in Firefly much better.
The thing is, as well, the cinematography worked for the movie. Again, you had a lot of the kind of dark tones. You didn't understand what the movie was supposed to be. It's supposed to be this kid's coming of age, in a sense of him trying to get to his father. Smith's character, if they were going to do what they did with Smith's character, he should have died. right? They then came up with some freaky bit at the end where if somehow he manages to not say anything to his son, but yet his son understands him. I was like, where did they develop these mutant powers? You know, are they like, was this a chemical?
They're X-Men.
Yeah, was it like a chemical on the planet that mutated them enough so they could now telepathically talk to one another? Or is it a father and son bond? Or is it just some stupid plot device that they use to kind of sum this up?
Stupid plot device.
A stupid plot device, I agree. and it's basically like the expedition in the movie as well. The fact that they're trying to give backstory to these characters, there wasn't much backstory going on. Even the bit where he outruns everyone, yet he's still a disappointment. I was like, what? Like, you're super strong, you're super sensitive, and you're super fucking everything, but yet we hate you. I'm like, what is he, fucking Superman? Superman got more love when he destroyed Metropolis. It made no sense at all. And it's the problem with this movie, it was disjointed, nonsensical.
And the worst thing is, kryptonite won't kill him.
Yeah, and it basically... You could tell it wasn't an M. Night movie, but you could tell the things about M. Night that were in there that could make it an M. Night movie. I put the whole blame on this on Will Smith. Out of anybody else, I blame him. One, out of his need to pimp his children, because he does it a lot. You got to stop doing it. Your kids aren't hookers. Two, the fact that, you know, Jaden Smith wants to be liked so much, so he does this whole thing where he sounds like the fucking Riddler because he always talks about stuff, and people are like, that's really profound. It's not profound. It's some kid speaking bullshit. Then you've got like fucking M. Night getting involved in the project, which he should have known wasn't, but he sat there and felt, well, Will Smith's big enough. Will Smith's a huge grossing actor. If we put his name on the movie, then it'll work. He should have kind of bowed out as soon as Smith goes, so we're going to put my kid in it. Ooh, yeah, I got to go. I don't want any part of this shit. The fact that he gets the blame for this movie is stupid. You know, if you know how the movie goes, if you know the backstage about it, if you know the production side, if you've seen the many interviews that Smith's done about this movie, even the ones where he says that the movie was his disappointment because he felt it didn't convey the message that it should have, you would have seen...
Yeah, no shit, Will Smith, you fucked this up, you twat.
Yeah, but you would have seen it as a Will Smith movie. In my opinion, Shyamalan as a director, he just sat there and took it. You know, he was Will Smith's bitch in every single way, like shape and form. So I'm not going to give him shit for this movie like everyone else has done. Smith should really consider never doing this again. I think him acting in movies is probably the better idea. Like, look at, you know, what was that movie called?
Focus.
Focus, yeah. He looks like he's doing a hell of a lot better in that than he is in this. So yeah, I've got no issue with Shyamalan whatsoever. So the end of the story, never work with Will Smith if he wants to put his son in the movie.
I agree with Burhan on that one, which is, you know, it's not his fault this movie turned into a train wreck. It's Will Smith had his hand in all the pies, and ultimately you had fuck all control of this movie because it was his project, even though he wasn't the director.
Yeah, it goes back to what I said, vanity projects. Never do them.
And that's going to round us out. I'm not going to talk much about his upcoming film, The Visit, because not much is known about that. It's supposedly some type of horror comedy that he's doing for like a low budget. I think it's being independently produced by his production company, Blinding Edge. So I think it's a smaller project, which is good. I mean, start off small, you know, work your way up again. But I will throw it over to Mike, to Burhan and Dave one last time before we round things out. Me and Cecil mentioned the whole anthology series thing about Shyamalan. Do you think that might be a good route for him to go? I'll start with you, Burhan, and go to Dave. Do you think maybe going the anthology route with TV might be the best course of action for him to kind of revive his career?
I still think his career could be done in doing B-movie horror flicks. I think he would be the perfect person to do it. Go more in terms of practical effects and basically flesh out the stories a little bit more. And work with new actors, you know, people that can be used as fodder. So the great thing about horror, especially boom movie horror, you don't have to have the best acting. All you need is just loads of slashing.
True. Dave, what do you think? Do you want him? Would you like to see him do something like an Outer Limits type thing for TV? Do you think that would be more his bag? Dave? Guys, do you guys hear me, or did we lose Dave?
Sorry, I was muted because I was having a coffee.
By the way, I just want to put a comment from a guy called Battle Cry who just said, Will Smith pips his kids. I walked in at the odd time.
I saw that, yeah. But yeah,
I think this could be a credible step for him to restart, retangent his career, because right now, movie land. So I could totally see him doing and he'd be perfect material for this. Do like a new kind of Outer Limits show. That'd be absolutely fantastic. 12 episodes of him writing some dodgy sci-fi / and/or horror show. I think that would be absolutely brilliant, because let's be honest, right now in cinematic land, his name's worth piss all. So yeah, seriously, you know what, Miguel, when you said that, now I've got my fingers crossed that happens, which is, Shaymalan, do the new reinvention of the Outer Limits. Well, in fact, no, do the reinvention of the Twilight Zone, so I can see your version of Shatner on a plane looking out the window and seeing a gremlin.
No one can do it better than John Lithgow, I'll say that. But yeah, that's pretty much it for our Shyamalan retrospective. Cecil, I very much appreciate that you stayed on a lot longer than we expected. I was worried when we got to the 2-hour mark that we were kind of crunching your time, but you stayed on for the whole episode, and I very much appreciate it. So I'll let you have the first plugs. Go ahead and tell people, where can we find Cecil Trachtenberg?
You can find me on goodbadflix.com, as well as on YouTube under Trachtenberg, but it's easier to just look up Good Bad Flicks. You'll find me there too. I'm also on Geek Juice Media, and I'm on 1201 Beyond, doing a podcast called Radiodrome with my good friends Josh Hadley and Pitar, where we talk about all kinds of things movie related. So I'm all over the interwebs.
I do have to say this, Radiodrome related. Josh recently put out a post on his Facebook about doing more retrospectives. You got to convince him to do a Scream retrospective. And if you do, I would love to be on, because we did an episode devoted to Scream about a couple months ago. I would love to bring kind of a younger viewpoint onto that, but you got to do it, man. You got to convince him to allow you to do a Scream retrospective on Radiodrome.
We had to really twist his arm to get him to do Sleepaway Camp. So Scream is going to be tough, because he genuinely hates Scream.
I know.
So that's the thing. I mean, he's making me. We've suffered through a lot of things for various retrospectives, so I think we might have to twist his arm. I will get back to you on that, but I mean that's going to take some serious bitching in order for him to.
You should do a retrospective of The Crow and cover the TV shows.
I'd actually really like to do that, because I'm working on an episode about City of Angels, and if you know anything about that,
movies, man, one of my favorites, especially Nicolas.
Have you ever? The PlayStation game was fucking terrible, and I didn't like movies apart from Iggy Pop.
It's funny that you mentioned. I just actually did a Good Bad Games on the PS1 game, and oh man, is it funny! It's the game itself is so broken. I mean, there's rocket launchers in the game, but for some reason, like at one point, a dude is holding a shovel, but he's shooting it like a rocket launcher. And the game is just broken.
I've got a game for you to do a retrospect on, which is, there's a game that's far more broken than that, based on one of my favorite comic characters, because I love fucking Crow. But it's, do you ever play the PlayStation 1 version of Spawn? That's such a broken game. It makes the inside of my eyes bleed.
I had somebody mention it on my comments. I think I have it. I know I have the Super Nintendo Spawn, which is so goddamn hard I can't get past the first boss. But I've
never met anyone who could get past the first boss. To be honest,
I got past the first boss.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It took a lot. Me and my nephew kept taking turns in order to do it, and I did it. But that game is so freaking hard.
Because the game, it's not bad up to that point, but then I'm like, oh, this is going to be kind of fun, beat 'em up with Spawn, and then you get to Overkill, and I'm like, I can't. What the hell am I supposed to do here?
Yeah, it's.
And then of course I went online and I watched somebody do like a speed run of it, and I'm like, oh, like you're supposed to cheat.
I was supposed to play it fast. That's what I was supposed to do. Damn it.
Yes.
Speedrunners itch my balls because they always commentate on my videos and say like, dude, you did this wrong, you did this wrong, you did this wrong. Are you fucking stupid? And I've always said, I just play games to show you them. Never said I was any good at them, but thanks, speedrunner Nazi police. Good for you.
Real quick, did you also plug your Twitter? I wasn't sure if you also threw the Twitter out there as well.
Oh, yes. You can also follow me on Twitter at Good Bad Flicks. That's with an FLICKS, because some people, they think it's the X on the end, but no, it's actually Flicks. So yes, follow me. Listen to me ramble about stuff and occasionally be funny.
Well, I'm gonna.
The guy's really funny. Oh, sorry about that.
That's all right. I'm gonna sub you and add you on Twitter as well, because after the conversation today,
I just subbed you and I'm about
channel.
to cane for your massive back catalogue.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes.
All right, Burhan, where can we find you? Go ahead and plug your project.
YouTube.com/TheNerdGenius. If you check me out, I'm going to be on the Excess Gaming Podcast YouTube channel, Xander Scullion, youtube.com/Xander Scullion, this Friday for a first of a series that we're doing called E-Tank. It's basically myself and Xander just, talking about stuff that we kind of like to talk about. It's kind of for this series. And the great thing about it is we're doing a review of the Pixels trailers. We talk about the top 5 things that we feel will work in the Pixels movie. It's one of those movies where we feel that it's getting a bit too much hatred.
It's not even out, but it's got so much hatred. It really fucking itches my eyes.
A lot of it is just due to Adam Sandler. And the fact is, peeps, he's not like the main thing about this movie. A lot of it comes from kind of like retro games, so make sure that you check it out. I'm going to be interested in watching this movie because a lot of it's coming from my childhood, so like 1982, basically from my times with the ColecoVision and the Atari 2600, of course, as well. Now, if you want to check me out, of course, I've got a new video coming up, hopefully tomorrow, for youtube.com/TheNerdGenius. That's TheNerd Nerd Genious. I don't know why I can't have a brain fart then. That's NerdGenius, not genius in normal sense. I know people are like, you misspelt it. Yes, I know. It's supposed to be ironic. So there you go. youtube.com/TheNerdGenius. Nerdgenius.com, my official site as well. And more new content and new news is coming as well. And I'm going to be doing decide to do a bit of a Silent Hill retrospective as well. My top 5 Bill Murray moments is coming out from Movie File with some Bill Murray reviews. I have been late of a lot of my stuff just because I've been kind of going through a few little bits and pieces. Make sure you check that out, guys. Keep up to date with my stuff if you want to find me on Facebook.
Burn the boy.
Burhan and the Boy tomorrow on the Retro Random Network as well. youtube.com/Random Radio. This is where this show's on. Burhan and the Boy tomorrow. Myself and Dave just chatting crap as we usually do. Whatever's on our mind, we talk about it. And Friday Slamcast, myself, Brandon Ligon, Dave Wade, whoever else that we can get on there as well. Nick Horacek discussing the various wrestling news. Saturday, I host a gaming show, a gaming podcast called I Got Gameplay. Episode 122 we're on now. We're doing From Strength to Strength. Check that out, guys. I'm hopefully going to be getting Fungo on because we're going to be doing an episode for Bloodborne. Haven't decided when that episode is going to be airing soon, but he wants to return, so we've got to just cross the T's and dot the I's, so to speak. So check that out. And yeah, that's me.
And Dave Wade, where can we find you?
I know I said I wouldn't do it, but I have to.
Don't go dark.
A little bit dark. Just a pinch dark.
Low Points Post 1975 on YouTube, ladies and gentlemen. Low Points Post.
Shut up, Burhan. Shut up, Burhan.
If you want to see Dave play with himself and talk about Liverpool.
PG-13 of dark.
Okay, yeah, we'll go modern era PG-13 dark. How about that?
All right. How about you can find me standing over your Xbox when it red rings, and you wrap that wet towel over it, and I look at you straight in the face and say, That does fuck all, sugar tits. Piss off.
Hey, it's really
Sorry.
me, damn it.
Can I actually promote my channel, by the way?
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. It's Brandon's fault. The fucking Slamcast. He introduced this dark element into my soul that I can't get out. You can find me on Longboys Post 1975 if you like retro video games on every system. We're talking Commodore Spectrum, Atari 2600, NES, Mega Drive,
ZX.
3DO. Oh, you said it correctly. Thank you.
Go ahead,
You can find all that shit on my channel. Plus, once every week on a Wednesday, I have a serious vlog, which I did today, which seems to have created quite a lot of new haters. Which is, are you happy with the console era you grew up with? And if you could change it, would you? So yeah, you like retro video games and you like a good vlog and waffle, then find me. And also, your Xbox dead, bitch. Accept it.
And you can find us here every Wednesday night, 8 o'clock-ish, for the Untitled Movie Show. Haven't figured out what next week's episode is, but I will keep you guys posted on our official Twitter page, twitter.com/
Bruce Lee.
We'll think about it. Twitter.com/unmovieshow is where you'll find links to previous episodes, as well as the most current episode of the Untitled Movie Show. And you'll also find links to the official Untitled Movie Show YouTube channel. Yes, it's a slow process, but I'm slowly but surely moving archived episodes from our Blog Talk Radio days over to the official YouTube channel. So subscribe to our Twitter page to get the link to that, because I haven't gotten enough subscribers to get an official dedicated link yet. Although I am working on third-party means.
I'll give you another plug.
I will do so. I'm working on third-party means to do that. It's going to take some money, but I'm going to work on that. So twitter.com/unmovieshow, youtube.com/unlimradio for the Untitled Movie Show every Wednesday night. And that's pretty much it for us. So Cecil, thank you so much for spending 3 hours with us.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm a huge fan of yours, and I really do appreciate you coming on.
Thanks a lot, guys. I had a lot of fun.
Awesome. And for myself, for Cecil Trachenberg, for Michael Burhan, and for Dave Wade, this has been the Untitled Movie Show. Take us out, Jay.
Celebrity voices are impersonated. No celebrities were harmed in filming of this episode.
Excuse me, sir. The show's over.
Get away, zit face.